Okay, good morning, everybody. How are we all feeling? Yeah, that's the face of tired human beings. We've had an amazing week so far, haven't we? Yeah. Folks, let's make some noise real quick for Thursday. Yeah. I've seen some of you keeling over a little bit. Let's do it one more time, but I want to see everyone. Let me see your hands in the air at the same time. No clapping, just hands in the air and make some noise. Let's go. Yeah, that's good. My G over here, the carrot, is killing it. Yeah, welcome to Thursday of Industry Week 2022, everybody. Hopefully you've had an amazing time so far. I know all of us on the team are having a great week. Remember, folks, hashtag IW22. Have you all been doing that, by the way? Yeah, a couple of you. Remember the post with the most? 50 quid, Amazon voucher. I got it right today. Not 15, it's 50. Yeah, it's going to be amazing. So make sure you're snapping away, getting your meme on, get your taglines on, all that kind of business. Folks, we've got a really exciting session ahead of us today. And we've had a flow of learning about the industry, learning about casting and analyzing and working in different types of games. Today we've got a real great treat for you. We've got a Q&A followed by a workshop with our very own Kevin Cheung. Show some love.
Mic check, mic check. All right, this works. So I don't know whose idea was to start so early. I mean, I didn't get much sleep. I'm not sure how many of you guys were. Who's playing Lost Ark here? Anyone? No? Okay. I like this. What's wrong with this side? What's going on? Elder Ring? No? You guys just play esports then? I mean, that's a good thing. You guys don't play games? I'll probably ask you what games you play later on. All right. Cool. Anyway, so, I mean, my name's Kevin Cheung, as you didn't see from before over here. We'll probably go into a bit more about me later on the slides. This is just a nice intro slide I like just to do. Even though I'm sure everyone here is probably aware, it's just a nice kind of, hey, normally I do these for parents or people who are, hey, esports and education or esports careers kind of thing. Anyways, I'll move on, let the slides go. But yeah, we will have a Q&A session after. Feel free, ask any questions, hands up. I mean, I can't really see hands, so yell at me, whatever. Just if you have any questions as I'm going along, just feel free, okay? If not, we'll have time after, post-workshop or before. Cool. Any questions for now? Let's test it out. No? No questions? What do I have for breakfast? No? Nothing? No one cares about me? All right, I see how it is. Tough crowd, eh? Cool. Anyways, so we'll get started. I got a fancy button. Ooh. Anyone else have this before? No? Ah, stepping up already. Cool. Anyway, so if I asked everyone here, what do you think of when you hear esports? What do you think? Come on, answers. You think it's just CSGO itself? Okay. Yes? Pro leagues, okay. Any other answers? Competitions, great. Just competitions in general or anything specifically? Okay. Competitive, yeah, great. What was that, sorry? Organizations, cool. We got some good answers, and as you'll soon see that you actually see. So we mentioned games. There's actually CSGO down here. Am I in the way? I'll stand here for a tiny bit here. But yeah, some people might consider the games themselves. So someone mentioned CSGO. These might be rather outdated. I'm sorry if your game is not there. This is rather old slides, and maybe I'm a bit biased, but hey. But yeah, you might think of games, right? Maybe you think of players. I'm not sure if anyone's aware of Wolfie's over here, the Fortnite, I think he's twos, won £500,000 or something like that. Crazy. And then Faker, for any League fans out here. Any League fans here? Okay, I heard predominantly League, that's good. Any Dota fans? You can get out. No. You don't belong here. Okay. We don't care about Dota here. You might think of team orgs. Someone down here said, I believe, team organizations. Yep. You'll soon realize that there's no really wrong or right answers here. It kind of encompasses all of them. Spoilers. You might think of on-air talent. Again, very outdated. Rather biased again as well. You might think of competitions or events. So we mentioned down here as well. For those who aren't aware, of the League of Legends 2017 World Championships in the Beijing Bird's Nest. I mean, did they fill that out? I can't remember. But it's kind of insane. I mean, back when I first started esports, the early growth of it, you wouldn't imagine it would sell out maybe a 20, 30,000 stadium like that. And then obviously the news would just always jump out and say, why is everyone watching people video games? I mean, we sure showed them. Anyways, moving on. So if I were to ask a second question, what careers exist within the esports industry? It's not really a question. We'll have a look. So if we take all of the areas that we looked at just before, So we take players, maybe some team orgs, on-air talent, events and competitions. Well, as I mentioned, it's not really one or two, it's kind of all of these and more. These are just some major examples. But let's say we put a major traditional position within the, in the careers market. Let's say we put management. I know this isn't like a management course, this is broadcasting. However, slides are old. You'll soon see later on a more specific one catered towards broadcasting because, let's be honest, I'm rather biased because my specialty was in broadcast production anyways. Moving on. So you might think of, well, guess what? All of these like divisions within esports, players, team orgs, on-air talent, events, they all have some relevance when it comes to management. So for players, you have player management. You manage the players, you manage the schedules, maybe you manage the rotors in terms of their travel, their budgets, what they eat even. For team org, you have team managers, kind of similar to player managers. For on-air talent, you have talent managers. And of course, events and competitions, you might have event managers. We can do the same for something else. So taking the same examples, let's put in marketing, PR, and communications. Again, same things apply. Players, you have social media. Teams, you have community managers. On-air talent, you might have branding. And event and competitions, you might have advertising. So why am I telling you this? I want you to consider and think about maybe what career paths you could potentially go down, right? Like I said, maybe you guys are already fixated on broadcast production, which is fine. However, these options aren't like limited. You don't have to only funnel one path. If anything, you can branch off of it to different roles, even despite, like, let's say you graduate from this course, whatever. Is everyone here on the broadcast production course or other courses scattered around? Is it just esports here or more? Mostly esports. Okay, great. If not, then like I said, there are multiple roles. I guess the message I'm trying to get across is that there are multiple positions, roles, and even like industries you can branch into, not even just within esports. And like I said, we can do that for multiple ones, right? So that's PR, we can do business, we can do law, we can do even journalism, etc. Careers within the esports industry. So let's take a more broad approach and have a look at all these different traditional, again, I use traditional industries as a very broad term here. But these might be some examples of more traditional career industries that people are used to right now. And guess what? The beauty of it is that you can just slide it over, slap on esports, and guess what? You now have people who are specializing within esports business management, people who are specializing within the marketing side of the esports industry, maybe esports data analysts, statistical analysts, right? These are big roles right now, actually. I know a lot of like different, it could be the game developers. Game developers are hiring data analysts, whether that's maybe, if you, again, want to talk from a broadcast point of view, maybe it's viewerships, maybe it's retention. How can you maintain your audience? How can you gain more? What demographics are you going to branch into? Is it Twitch that's predominantly bringing in the views? Is it YouTube? Is it Facebook gaming? All these different questions, right? But as you can see, there's multiple different roles within esports that encompasses all these traditional industries. You are essentially, potentially esports specialists, right? And now we're moving on to the good stuff, right? So again, my bias, again, broadcast production. These are just a mashup of examples that from the top of my head I can think of, right? Hopefully you've already thought about maybe some things you're interested in, maybe you've dabbled in from the gallery. I saw some students messing around in some TD roles, some directing, some producing roles. It's really great. Some replays, etc. So it's great to see you already like getting that experience because that's very rare. I didn't get any experience until I actually broke into my role as a observer, which we'll get onto later on in a second. But here are just some examples, at least from, again, these aren't like the only examples. These are just like a very thorough list of what I consider from the top of my head. So yeah, maybe there's some roles here that you've never thought about. Maybe there's some roles that you've like, hey, maybe I'll give that a shot. And as I think all these roles you can potentially right now. The great thing about studying, potentially about like esports in education or whatever, is that you don't even have to be doing this course. You could be doing like a music production course. You could be doing, I don't know, business. You could be doing law. You would still be able to potentially dabble in any of these roles. I'm not sure if Confetti or Nottingham have like a student society, like esports or gaming society. Guess what you do? Cool. Are you guys running like tournaments? Are you running like viewing parties or anything? Cool. Any viewing parties? All right, so if you want to take away like one advice, something that you can do right now is organize a League of Legends Worlds viewing party, or Spring Finals is coming up, I believe, or another game, right? Maybe a CS:GO major, maybe a Dota major, maybe whatever, right? Insert game and their major title, right? Organize a viewing party, and you might think, well, why? The thing is, you're getting the experience from operating an event. I mean, a viewing party is an event in a way. Maybe more difficult in the past because recently COVID has impacted things. It's difficult to have in-house viewerships. People come into a room. However, it's still possible to do. And now things are easing up. I mean, the fact that we can have many people in this room kind of shows we can, right? Imagine there was a viewing party here right now. There's so much you can do with that. Right? The experience of logistics, the experiences of organizations, the operation side of things, even like social media, right? Advertising, hey, we got this viewing party, come watch kind of thing, right? And that looks great in your CV, which is why I think the potential of Confetti is much better than a large majority of the other competitors within like the esports educational space. It's the fact that you have things like this. You have this industry week where you have, in my opinion, some really renowned people. I mean, the multiple esports alone, the names that I've heard that are coming to speak or have already spoken, they're reputable. And I've came from Staffordshire University, no heads to BCU, but like they don't have the same caliber of the people of the guests, what you're getting here. I'm not like bigging myself up. I could be like, if anything, I've seen what you've had in the music side of things. I don't even know if I belong here. But what I'm saying is like, you guys have great opportunities here, and I'm actually stoked that you're getting this. Awesome. Anyway, I went sidetrack. I go off of tangents a lot, so apologies if I dabble on or if I go on too much. Just tell me to shut up and move on. Cool. But yeah, has anyone else like maybe picked on some roles that they never was aware of here? Or did you know about all these roles already? Do you know about what they do and everything? Yes, no? Maybe? Tough crowd. All right. So, this is a nice quote I like to always like reiterate to like whenever I'm doing like a talk like this, or trying to motivate people, I guess, who want to look into esports. So I had a manager back in Riot Games called Dirk. I know it's a very long name. Dirk Niestadkotter? Okay, don't tell I mess it up. Basically, I was in the control room one time working one of the shows, and he mentioned to me like, hey, Kevin, look around. Imagine if everyone in this control room knew about esports, knew about the game League of Legends. How much better would this broadcast be? And that resonated with me. Do you know why? I mean, just think about it, because from the perspective of him, like he was like the producer and also like the manager, but it made sense to me because I was like one of the few people who he was applying this to. I was young, I knew about the game, I knew about esports, but now I was also working within like the studio, within the broadcast production, the live environment of it. But you don't get many people like that. And then I'm talking like for 5-6 years ago. Obviously now more people are branching into it. But back then, we didn't have many people like me who had the opportunity to do that. A lot of people back then were people from traditional broadcast industries, traditional television, traditional sports, live events like music. And because there's no one there at the time, they were hiring these people who know nothing about games, nothing about league, nothing about esports. And one problem when you have people who don't know about the scene or what's going on is that they're always going to be reacting. So the example I like to give is imagine, there's whatever game's being broadcasted and a teamfight breaks out or kills happen and the crowd goes wild. Let's say there's a camera operator, right? That camera operator never played League, never watched the game, doesn't know what's going on. The fact that they don't know what's going on is they're going to hear or see that crowd and then get that shot, right? Because I'm camera operator, you want to get that shot, right? You want to get the shot of the crowds cheering, going, oh, yes, woo, happy noises, whatever, right? You want to get that shot as a camera operator. However, the difference between someone who, let's say, knows about the game, who watches the game, who understands what's going on, they're watching it, they're already anticipating, right? So they're the ones who are going to move that camera on the crowd, anticipating a reaction, which looks great because you want a great reaction from the crowd. It looks great on the show. It looks great on the broadcast. And the person who doesn't know anything about the game, they're always playing catch-up, right? They're reacting to what's going on, while someone who knows about the game, for example, I assume the large majority of you, they're already anticipating it, right? They're one step ahead. They're already there at the mark, while someone who doesn't know about the game, they're like, oh, no, I'm already losing a second. And a second's, all you need to miss a great shot. So that's just one example. But hopefully you all agree that, working within the environment that you're familiar with, it just makes sense. And like I said, this was like 5, 6, 7 years ago. but I still think it still applies. So I still think this applies to, if not all of you, working in the space, because we need more people who know about the game, who know about the industry, but who also want to dabble in the space like broadcast production. Because I joke that the space, at least back then, still now kind of, is just full of boomers, right? It's full of boomers, but we needed people. We needed people in there to take these jobs. We just didn't have enough people who knew about the game who were in the space. So there's a large market looking for people who play and understand the games, especially for, in my anecdotal, my experiences, especially within the live production space, within esports. And now more to the personal side about myself. So, you know my name. However, we'll start in the beginning. Ooh. So in the beginning, I'm not sure how many of you know about this about me, but I did start off as a player, a semi-professional League of Legends pro in the UK. He's my boy Vinny. Back when we were in Ice Series, we were at Epic LAN. Basically, me and Vinny formed our own team. We got ourselves sponsored by Choke Gaming. Weird name. Every time we lose, people said, "Ha, they choked." Funny. But yeah, so we started our own team. I was like the manager of it. Like I said, I got a sponsor and everything. So there's so many things you can really do. And this is when I was at university as well. I was at uni, we just thought, hey, people were, winning money playing video games. What is this? So then we formed our own team, decided to, take on a few tournaments ourselves. And that was the start of it. That was the journey. Obviously, we won some, we placed some, first, second, third. First of all, we're lucky. There we go. But obviously, we had our star roster. I retired early. We can go on about that later on, or why I retired. But yeah, either way, this is our strongest roster. We took first place in several tournaments. We had a good year. And we took first place in the very first Riot Games-sponsored League of Legends events in the UK and Northern Ireland. You can't forget Northern Ireland. And that's when I actually dabbled and expanded in other roles. So like I said before, I started off as a player, as a team manager, even as an analyst in a way. But then next steps led me on to other roles. So for example, I dabbled in on-air talent positions, such as shoutcasting, more so as a color caster. And then analyst desk work, which is kind of natural, at least back then in League. If you're a color caster, you kind of naturally, adopt into the analyst roles for the expert desks. Might recognize some few faces in there from League fans. I'll say it's like Scoundrel here. Oisin, he's doing LPL. He's featured in LEC now. Who's that? There's Pulse, there's James, and there's Medic. This is a throwback picture. Oh, my God. And then, of course, the big step in my life and in my career, if anything, was joining Riot Games. Literally, as soon as I graduated, I was like, hey, I applied for a job as an in-game observer. And I literally got accepted, and I flew over to Berlin without thinking about it. Just left. Very early decisions. So I joined as an in-game observer. For those that don't know, it's basically the in-game camera person. I'm sure many of you are aware of that right now. Some people call it maybe the in-game director. It's just a nice fancier name, in-game director, observer, whatever you want to call it. Camera person, I don't know. I also dabbled in work such as the EVS role, so EVS tape operator, EVS tape producer. I just like to say EVS producer. However, EVS confuses people because EVS itself is the company, it's the equipment. However, it's almost used as the role, as a title as well. But basically, I was managing video content within the actual broadcast itself. So I was managing replays, live replays, instant replays, content itself. Maybe I was working with pro teams. I was producing content, recording the interviews, asking them, hey, what are your thoughts about next week's games against X team? That kind of thing, right? Basically managing video content. I don't know why I flashed that. Riot Games, woo, production. I just think it's a cool shot. Anyways, moving on. Experiences. Okay, this is a good bit. So, some of the greatest experience I managed to get from working within esports, like I said, this is more just the motivation, more inspiration to maybe you want to continue working in esports. Travel. You're able to travel around the world. That's in Hong Kong offices, the Riot Games. This is Rotterdam. This is Katowice, Poland. Shanghai, China. Barcelona, Spain. DreamHack in Jönköping, I believe, in Sweden. Not sure I butchered that. Krakow, Poland. Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And Berlin. I think that was the 2015 World Finals in League. I don't know, man. But yeah, working in esports, especially in broadcast and events, you're allowed these opportunities to travel, which is great. Because if you love traveling, hey, it's just part of the job. Get flown over, stay in nice hotels, whatever, food, living, it's nice, right? It's just a nice thing to do. It's like tagged down to the role. You're going to get a lot of opportunities to travel, to work for these major events, obviously if you get there. But yeah, also alongside traveling, assuming you like it, it's the people you meet, the people you come across. I've met some amazing people who I get to work with. You might recognize some faces here. Like I said, these are very old photos. Just little throwbacks. So travel, the people you meet. And of course, this is the old EULCS crew back in the day. I'm not sure where you can find me. I'm over here in a nice pixelated picture. Haven't changed, have I? So those are like some skills and some experiences that I managed to develop over the few years. And this is just Riot Games alone. Let's talk about the esports industry as a whole. So, as I mentioned, I started off as a player, team captain, and the coach. The skills I managed to develop and gain from those was operating within tournaments. So very few people understand that even as a player. You mentioned you have teams participating in the NUL and NSC. Guess what? The fact that they're participating in these tournaments, in these competitions, they're already developing like knowledge within how things operate, right? If you compete in a tournament, ideally you know how the tournament operates. Maybe you understand how the rules work, right? What's allowed, what's not allowed. If you break the rules, will you get punished? How will you get punished? You don't know this. You just think about it yourself as a player, right? You're just there competing. However, you internally know this. You're just not aware of it. So this is why when I talk to students and ask, hey, what do you know? Well, have you got any experience of any sports? They go, no. I'm like, well, you competed in the NUL, right? Technically, you're already in the ecosystem as a player within competitions, right? You might not be behind the operations and the running of the events. However, as a player, as a competitor, maybe even as a viewer, you are still gaining an understanding of how it operates. You're just on the different side of how that thing works. And then there's obviously leadership skills from being team captain, a team player, even an educator as a coaching. Then there's the whole team manager and the analyst side of things. Some skills, with budgeting. As a team manager, I would be budgeting my travel costs for my teams when we're traveling to national or regional events like Insomnia, like Epic LAN, our coaches, our train journeys, our hotels, our expenses. These are things you can easily pick up from just being like some of these roles. Shoutcasting and analysts are more on a talent roles, knowledge of the game, storytelling, delivery. I mean, you might think my delivery is awful right now. I mean, I should probably slow down. I speak quite fast sometimes. I need to think about what I say. Even like public relations, so social media management, etc. And then finally finishing off the broadcast production side of things, the heavy load with Riot Games. What did I learn from there? Obviously observing skills. I can put just general live broadcast production there. Content creation, content management, storyboarding, delivery, storytelling, narrative building, etc. Networking, obviously working within Riot. I met loads of people, amazing people from Europe, from the North American offices, from the Chinese offices, Korea. It was global, obviously, right? But that gave me many opportunities to meet people, to talk to people, to network, which is very important. And of course, industry knowledge. And I could also put down another slide down here, most recently, working within the educational space. I never imagined myself to ever work in academia. I never even imagined myself to ever be a lecturer. But obviously, when I joined staffs, that happened, right? So there could be a whole nother section down here, branching on from educator, from being a coach to now being a lecturer, is like, driving the futures of, for example, you guys as students. Who would have thought that was possible, right? I didn't think it was possible. I still don't think it's like, is it still a thing? I still feel weird calling myself a lecturer at times. I don't want to finish that so quickly, actually. But yeah, I just want everyone to look at this and be like, do you do any of these? Do you currently do any of these? Because you can pull so many different skills and experiences from that. Don't think that just because you are a player, you can't apply any of these or you can't learn any of these. You just have to find and fine-tune and pick out and then apply it. Like I said, as a player, I understand tournaments. As a team captain, you learn leadership. As a player, you learn teamwork or team play, whatever, right? There are all these skills you can find. I'm sure there are many things you're doing right now. In that gallery alone, I can name several things you can do, several roles you can do. And some things I just regret in the past is just thinking about, wow, I had this amazing opportunity, but I didn't take advantage of it, right? Or I didn't get the most out of it. I remember telling Jacob about, hey, if you're working these events, make sure that you talk to everyone. Ask them when they have downtime, hey, what's your role? What do you do? Can you maybe teach me how this works? Because I remember like working with the observers back when I was training some back in Berlin. I'm sure most of you aware what the teleprompter is. You know, that kind of boring thing where it goes up and down. Observer, the trainees hated it. We needed someone to do it, to manage the teleprompter for the talent, but they hated it. They always complain when they're on teleprompter duty. And I told them, well, look, here's the thing. Because the teleprompter was positioned in the central control hub. It was positioned in the gallery. So you have the director, you have the producers in front, then you have the second row, which had the telestrators and the video and the graphics operators, stats, etc. And then for some reason they threw me at the back with the video and stuff. Kind of lame, but whatever. But what I was telling them is, look, yes, the action itself is boring. However, because it's boring, there's a lot of downtime. Something that they could have done was take advantage of the opportunity and the environment and the situation that they had, which was surrounding themselves with so much knowledge. Like, even in that one room alone, even that one gallery, there's probably over like 200 years of experience and skills that they could learn from, pick up from, right? If they just listened, like I learned a lot of my producing and directing workflows and experiences and knowledge just from being in that gallery, just from listening to the director, the workflow, the communication, the directions. A lot of that wasn't me doing it or performing it. It was actually me just listening and understand how it worked. So you don't have to actually know how to, actually push the buttons. You know how it physically happens, but now you know why it happens, the theory behind it. So just because you never observe doesn't mean you don't know how to observe in a way, get away. Obviously, if practice makes perfect, you might not be an amazing observer. However, there's nothing stopping you from saying you can't observe, right? You don't have to be a perfectionist. You don't have to be like Excel. You don't have to be straight 100, which I have an issue with. Like I have like this whole issue of, if I can't, put my all into it, I don't want to do it. But there's always going to be a start, especially at the stage you guys are in. Like you could dabble in many things you want. And something that's great, again, from the esports education point of view, being, able to study and mess around with the equipment is you have a nice safe spot here. In that gallery, what happens in that gallery is confined within the space. You might try something in a live major broadcast, and you might fuck up. Sorry for my language. I'm about to swear, right? Probably not. Oh, shit. Sorry. You might mess up, like I just did. Hey. But yeah, you might mess up, but guess what? Messing up in here is going to be so much more easier, so much more comfortable than messing up in a major broadcast with maybe over 100,000 viewers, right? You have a safe environment, you have a comfortable environment to test the waters, to mess around. So take advantage of it, right? Experiment here, be creative here. Take the opportunity to mess up here, learn from those mistakes, and then take those experiences and then move on to bigger things. Don't make the same mistakes you made here out there. Because you don't want your first mistake to be out there where it matters, right? Where your job's on the line, where your reputation's on the line, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, safe space, take advantage of what you have right now, the opportunities. Like I said, the fact that you have this whole industry week right now, it's amazing. I'm jealous, if anything. So yeah, stop making me jealous. But yeah, that's just the general intro myself about the esports stuff. So thank you there. Do we have any questions for the time being? Hand up. Anything. Like, I'm very transparent, so yeah. Monster. I save this guys for you, right? True gamer here.
Cheers. Once again, wait for the microphone before you ask your question. Can we see some hands? Lovely. We'll start over here.
So when you worked at Riot Games, were you hired on there like full time or were you a freelancer?
Great question. So, do I get to slag off Riot already? So it was complicated. Okay, so oh god, was that a bad word? I'm sorry. So I joined as a contractor, but it was, how do I explain this? It's funny because my manager literally said, "Hey, you're basically full time because I was in the offices every day, everyone else's. I think it was office 4 days a week, and then it was show 2 times, or 3 days office, and then it was 2 or 3 broadcast days. So technically, I was almost like working as a full-time employee, but on paper, I was actually a contractor. And funny thing is, I wasn't contracted under Riot Games. I was contracted under an external company. Why? I think there might be some weird business about, hey, if you're under us as an employee, even as a contractor, then we have to give you benefits. I'm just like assuming here, maybe not the case, but maybe, it's from a educational guess, it will be a case of the less they have under them, the less, employee benefits they have to pay out and everything, which obviously felt bad. So in a way, I felt like I was a part of the team, but on paper, I wasn't. So I was, maybe I was excluded from the internal riot meetings. So there'll be times where me and the other observers were in the office working, but then a riot in-house meeting would happen. Everyone leaves the room, and it's us there, just like, oh, we're feeling left out again. So these were like the downsides and the issues. And like I said, I don't know, what was the reason? Was it like a financial reason? Was it Riot Games just trying to save money? I don't know. Like I don't know. I can't really say yes or no to that. But yeah, to answer that question, I was technically a contractor, not under Riot, but basically with Riot. So I'm always very careful. I never say like I was a rioter. I always have to say I worked with Riot. Never I worked. I mean, it's weird. It's just like I know it's just weird lingo in the end. Do I say I worked for Riot? Do I say I worked with Riot? Because I can't say I was a rioter, because technically that wasn't true. Even though my manager would say technically you kind of were. You were part of the team. You were there every day with everyone. We sat together, we worked together, we played together, etc. But I mean, the whole topic of freelance versus full-time employees, that could be its whole session, right? So we can expand on that if we have time, and I'm sure we will. But yeah, great question. So again, TLDR, I blabber on again. Contractor, but not under Riot, for external partner with Riot. Reasons why? Who knows? Great question.
Disclaimer. There we go.
What inspired you to get into education, and why did you want to go into education and teach esports to the masses through a degree level?
Great question. So when I left Berlin, so when I left Riot, I moved back to the UK, and I was in this kind of weird situation of, what do I do with my life, right? I go through these a lot, and I'm sure many of you might go through this. Don't feel lost, right? I go through the model of learn from my mistakes. But why did I join? I'll be honest, right? A friend of mine reached out to me and was like, hey, look, they have this position as an esports lecturer at Stafford University. And I was like, oh, cool. I mean, I'm looking for a job here because I was back home just, kind of relaxing, seeing family and everything. And I applied. I was surprised. I think most people I've spoke to's first reactions when they see or hear about esports lecturing or esports at university was, what, this exists? There's an esports course? And that was my reaction as well. And then the first thing that I thought of, was who was teaching, what are they teaching, and who developed the course and everything like that, right? And obviously my experience at Stats, we can explore it later on. Probably won't have time to go for everything right now, but there are obviously large issues with because they claim, they probably are, they claim to be the very first esports course in the whole UK, the whole Europe, maybe even the whole world, I don't know, because America have their own unique situation with programs, etc. But naturally that brings problems. So what got me into it was, obviously, like I said, the opportunity was there. I thought it was interesting and a space that I could, build something there for it. And also because I was just curious. I was curious about, this is a thing. So I want to know who's teaching it, what's teaching it, and where this really is, right? So there's many factors. I think a good situation was a good timing. I was looking for a job, this came up, cool. There's a lot of curiosity about it. But when I actually joined, I solidified my position as hey, first of all, I think there are a lot of issues, at least from that one-time experience at Staffs. So with those issues, I was like, I truly do believe that there's a space for esports in education, whether that's, at higher education in terms of university level, maybe even further education in terms of college and sixth form levels. I truly do believe there's a space for it, but obviously there's going to be bad apples in the place of, and from an honest point of view, I truly believe that Staff this year, we're just trying to jump the ball. They wanted to be the first because guess what? That's a very powerful marketing tool, right? We are the first, esports course in the whole world or whole UK. And I'll be honest, a lot of students told me that the only reason they applied is because they saw that, right? They literally saw that marketing and it worked on them. Their aunts were like, hey, there's this new esports course. You like gaming, you like esports, right? Why don't you apply? So it worked. But basically from my experiences, I see the space as opportunity, potential, and in all honesty and transparency, I felt like the students were being let down. So I felt like instead of just being like, oh, there's problems here, this sucks, we need to change that, instead of just complaining about it, I wanted to be someone who would actually tackle the space and actually help solve potential issues, right? I'm not going to solve it myself, like I said, because esports is so expansive, right? Esports isn't just one thing. It's many things, as we saw, right? Esports is events, it's competitions, it's social media, it's business, it's broadcast production, it's content creation, it's law, it's journalism, it's music now, right? It's all these things. And if anything, to be honest with myself, my specialty is in broadcast production. Yes, I've dabbled in events. Yes, I dabbled in social media and management. However, esports law, I don't know about that. You know, that's not me. That's for someone else to ask around. So I think it's a huge service that education establishments or institutions need to play is to like get the right people, get the people who know this stuff, get the people who maybe have experiences. It's a very tricky thing. Like I said, this is all subjective, and this is like personal opinion, obviously. But again, I probably dabbled on too much. Basically, opportunity was there, curiosity was there, and I saw some issues and mistakes that I want to potentially solve myself. And we can like expand on that later on with like other things like side projects I've been working on. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question. Apologies again for blabbing on. Tell me to shut up and move on if you want. Next question.
Could you pass the microphone down, please?
Hi.
Hi.
I had two questions. First
Greedy.
of all, I wanted to know from your experience, how much control does the observer have over the narrative of the casters? Do you think it's 50-50, or do you think the observer takes more of a backseat? And then also, in backroom production, how much room do you believe at the highest level of esports production there is to swap between positions? Because obviously at the university level here, we get a lot of opportunity to explore different roles. And I was wondering if, I don't know, someone that was vision mixing that knows a lot about League of Legends might want to look into in-game observing and how possible that is at, I don't know, Riot Games, for example.
Great question. So just to like summarize it, so the first question was how much control or how much influence do observers compared to talent have, right? So answer that first. Mind me of the second question. So this is a great question because this is something I always teach when I'm teaching people observing or like when I'm working with someone. This question always comes up. It's like, who's leading it, right? Is it the casters leading it? Is it the observers? And it depends. So I always explain it as in, well, there are some casters who like to be kind of like handheld through what you're showing them. So if the way I observe is if the casters aren't specifically mentioning something, or if they're not developing a narrative that I can like understand or I think it's good to show, then I take the lead. I kind of take the narrative and I point them towards what I feel like is best. So then that's an observer taking the front lead in terms of the direction of the in-game portion of it. However, then you have some casters who are more confident, who know what they want, and they'll be like, if we can see this, right? Or if we can see the jungle, or if we can see the wards, or if we can see what this person, player, champion is doing right now. That's a very directive, almost like an ask, like, hey, observers, show us this, right? So it really depends, because I've worked with a lot of casters from both spectrums, right? One side would be, yes, show me this, show me that, show me that, which is great, because that makes my life easier, right? They just say, I want this, I show them that, boom. And that looks good on the show itself, because you always want to pair what the audience hears, the casters talking, to what they see, which is what you're showing them. So that's a very important thing for anyone who even wants to be an observer. Not even observing, this applies to anything, especially in content or production, at least in my opinion. You always want to like sync up what the audience hears to what they sees. If that makes sense, right? Because you don't want the casters talking about, I'm going to use League as an example, sorry for those who aren't aware of it, but you don't want the casters talking about the jungle, right? Or the junglers invading or whatever, and then just show bot lane or something, right? That doesn't make sense because you want to sync up what you see and what you hear. So yes, you have casters who are more directive, and then easy for me, I just show them it, great. But then the casters who are kind of quiet, you can tell the casters who are more reactive, and that's when I'm like, oh, so they're not gonna pick up on stuff, so then I'm naturally gonna take the lead. So like I said, it really does depend, which is why it's important as an observer to really understand that. So it might be actually important to maybe before the first show, you actually have a meeting with the casters, right? So something I try and do is I organize a one-to-one with the casters, maybe 10 minutes before the show, maybe a day before. Just like, hey, I'm your observer, anything you want in particular? Because it's nice to see what they are, right? What they like. Because you're gonna have casters who are more analytical. They want to see like macro, or you might have the casters who just kind of like, just I just want to like talk about the game, right? So there's that side of the communication. So like I said, a lot of these answers are gonna be, it depends. But there is like a slight answer there in terms of like, it's naturally how it develops, because every game is different, right? Some games you can't show everything what the casters want. Sometimes the casters ask us something, but you're like, no, there's something going on here that's more important, right? And then maybe it turns out that, oh, the caster gets mad, like, why didn't you show me this, right? You made me look stupid online or something, or on air. But then you can like, okay, let's VOD review, right? And keyword VOD review. Review your VODs, whatever you do. You know, as a director, you can review what you did. As a producer, you can rework, you can watch what you did. As an observer, you can watch what you showed, right? Etc. So yeah, you can VOD review it. You can VOD review it, and then have a discussion about why you did it. Maybe next time should we do the same things, etc. etc. So that's the first question. Again, very long answer. Sorry. And your second question was how something to do with expertise about how you can maybe explore different options. Like if you're you're working on the vision mixer or TD, how could you maybe like delve into different roles, or
like
how do you start off?
I guess how flexible is it in backroom production to be able to swap from one role to another? Obviously, you're not just gonna have a vision mixer just go on air doing observing. Maybe you like make sure that like test them out or something first. But like, is that even like a possibility at the highest level? Yeah,
100%. So as you asked this, I had a perfect answer in my head. It was a case of, and this will be expanded on maybe tomorrow with JD. Hopefully you're aware of JD Wu is going to come in. So funny thing is, me and JD both started out as, we had a similar path. We both started out as competitive players. And then we both got onboarded into Riot Games as observers. So we were both players, in-game observers, because I feel like in order to be a good in-game observer, you have to be a good player, because you're basically the camera person for highly competitive League of Legends, literally the highest level of league there is. Not to brag, but yeah, that's a point, right? And that was a help, right? In order to understand, you got to be able to understand what the players are thinking, what they're doing, right? Because you got to follow them, you got to show them. But yeah, we both started as players and then observers, and then naturally, this is what I feel Riot Games did back then. I think they're still doing it now. Is naturally they have like an entry position or an entry role with observing, because observing, all you really needed to do was know the game. You know, I didn't know anything about I didn't know broadcast production was a thing. Honestly, I literally joined Berlin. I was like, oh my god, there's studios, like smoke and mirrors. Like, what is this? There's cameras here. Like, I literally have no idea. But we worked from being an in-game observer, and like I said before, just being an observer. I listened into the comms. I always had the director in my ear. I had the producer in my ear. Just because of that, just because of listening and working, every show for years, I now understand the general workflow of what they want. Maybe I don't know like the pure ins and out. I don't know what they do maybe outside of the show, post-show or pre-show. I mean, I kind of do. But from the nitty-gritty side, when it comes to the show, I kind of roughly know what they want, what they do. And that's the thing of taking advantage of your position, right? As an observer, I was allowed to, or able to listen to the comms from the director. I was also then able to learn. And just based off of that alone, I'm pretty comfortable in directing or even TDing myself, right? I'm comfortable in producing myself. I produce my own league shows. I've written rundowns. I've built stories. All these things. So I think you guys, like I said, you guys have a great position because you have so much different equipment here. Like you have the vision mixers, which is like again heavy directing or technical directing work. But these all naturally kind of involve each other. You won't it's very obviously you don't have. I mean, for example, right? If you have a director, you're probably very likely to have a technical director, right? It depends on the broadcast and the scale, because depending on what level, we're talking about if we compare it to like major events like Riot Games Worlds, then you probably have a separate role for a lot of things, right? Like you have a TD and then you have a director. Both here or more like maybe collegiate or amateur events, you might have someone who is the director but also the technical director, right? Who are also the producer, which you will see a lot. I'm sure like Jacob could talk about more about this, but you have, this annoys me. This annoys me in a lot of like remote broadcasts I work with in North American, mostly like broadcasts. So they have a role and they call them the producer. Whilst for me, the producer is like the creative, like they're the producer. Their product is the show. And the director is just the one who's making that come to light. So the producer has the vision, has the creative narrative, has, it's their project in a way. and then they pass it on like, hey, I have this thing. Can you as a director make this happen? And then, and then they had the TD who's actually pushing on the buttons to make that happen kind of thing, right? So something that I always hear a lot is like people calling themselves producers when they're actually, I mean, it's not bad to them. It's just easier. Instead of saying, oh, I'm the producer, TD, and director for this show, right? They just say producer to encompass all of it. However, from my experience, technically, yes, you're the producer, but you're also the technical director, you're also the director. But it's just that it feels weird just summarizing into one role, right? But it kind of makes sense. You don't want to constantly put, hey, I was producer, technical director, TD for that show, whatever, right? But again, sorry for blabbing on. But yeah, to answer the question, I think you can easily expand it into the roles. And it depends on what scale you're talking about, though, right? Just because, I mean, I think the vision mixer is one of the most skillful of anything, right? I think observing is easy to pick up. It's difficult to master, I feel. You know, I always like critique the North American observers. Like, there's always this war between EU observers and North American. And I always stand by that EU observers are way better. I watch their stuff, I'm like, man, critique. But no, I do feel like there's a lot of transitions. There's different crossover. There's a lot of crossover skills between, because like I said, producers work so closely with the directors, right? And then TD and directors is just natural. It's literally one person saying something and the other person just hitting the buttons. And you can easily do that yourself. You can be a director and a TD. You could be the one saying, okay, stand by, we're moving on to A1, A block, 3, 2, 1, go, and then you're hitting the button yourselves, right? It's just like that, because in a larger broadcast, you might need the extra brain power to delegate that responsibility to someone else. Because you're looking at all the cameras, right? You got to think more, and maybe you are just a god and you can like literally hit buttons and multitask like crazy. And I'm sure many of you are. Anyways, long question. Sorry for the answer again. You guys got to stop me.
As a music production student and technology, what roles would you recommend or see fit to start off as?
So are we talking about, as a music production student, how could you maybe get involved in esports?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm just going to move this here because Todd's standing up. Also looks better, right? Okay, so this is a great question because I've had this question before, and basically a little backstory here. So it was during an open day, and a parent came up to me and was like, hey, my son's interested in music. However, he also likes gaming. Is there any way those things cross over? And I was like, great question, because you've heard of KDA, right? Yep, you've heard of KDA. So, I mean, Riot Games. Who thinks Riot Games is still just a game development company? I don't think so. I mean, said subjective, my opinion, but they are pretty much just a large entertainment industry right now, right? They dabbled in, obviously, to start off with video games with League of Legends. Then they dabbled in music with KDA. Then they dabbled in content in terms of like animations with Arcane. Netflix, great show, right? So the way I see things is, I mean, I know Riot Games has a team specifically for developing music, whether that's music for the games themselves, but no, they literally have a whole team, a whole studio, a whole workspace just dedicated to Riot Games music. I mean, I think it's on YouTube, you can find it on the Twitter, but they literally have their own socials or accounts specifically focused around music production. I'm not going to be the one to say like, yeah, there's going to be loads of jobs there. I think it's always going to be very tight and very difficult to break in because competition is high. Like, one thing I want to say with Riot Games is they literally hire the best of the best. I was lucky because my role was very entry level. But you look at any other roles, it's very difficult because, like I said, they have the money, they have the experience, they have the reputation to onboard people with 10 years of experience, right? Like, you could literally go to Riot Games careers right now, and most of their positions are like, I want 10 years experience, I want 7, I want 5. It's very difficult, and I don't want to dishearten anyone, but there are opportunities. But like I said, I'm not here to lie to you either. And personally, I could just say I don't know, because honestly, I don't know. But I do know there is potential. I don't know how expansive that's going to be. Maybe other developers, such as Activision Blizzard, maybe EA, maybe Sony, maybe all these other game developing companies, maybe they branch off into their own music branch in departments, right? And I don't see that being a thing that's not going to happen, because Fortnite, they're doing live music events within their actual game itself. I mean, that's taken like the space by storm in terms of the developments of technology. So I see a lot of potential. It's more about what you feel like, what do you want to do, right? Because the music itself isn't just one thing, right? There's so much more, because it's very expansive. I mean, a layman person might say music is just, you play instruments or you sing, right? But there's much more to it than that. Much more that I probably don't have the answers for either, but you probably would know more than me. So then how would you think about applying music to the games? What you should be asking. What can music do to help follow alongside esports or gaming? And there are many things like that. I think KDA was the perfect example of that. It's this whole, the virtual artist, right? I'm not sure if many people here are aware of Vocaloids in Japan, I don't know, Hatsune Miku and stuff like that. I still feel there's a lot of potential for that. Virtual artists, that's a thing for the future. I don't know how you meld that in terms of what you want to do within music, but I personally think there's potential. Where that's gonna go, I don't know. How expansive that's gonna be, I don't know. Do you think Riot Games is gonna push out another group? I honestly think so, right? There's gonna be, imagine a K-pop boy band for Riot Games, right? I don't know what champions or characters they're gonna involve in that, but in the future, I honestly feel so. Maybe not so much as KDA, but yeah, I don't know. So hopefully that answers your question, but sorry if it doesn't, but honestly, my background isn't in music. I love music, and I'd love to even produce music one day, but I don't have the answers. Hopefully that does help somewhat, though. There's potential. Work for it. Maybe I can psych up some people, some connections within the Riot Games music side. So maybe I can introduce you guys to one-to-one. You can ask them the questions, because that's the most I can do, really. Is to be like, hey, I don't know about this, but this person does. So yeah, maybe reach out later, and I can try and connect the two people there. Cool.
How closely, when you work with Riot, would you say you had the opportunity to work with other departments within Riot, if any?
Great question. So, depends on where, because Berlin, when I first joined, was when Riot Games first moved from Cologne, because I'm not sure if many of you are aware, but Riot Games back then, the EULCS, it was a partnership or a joint partnership with ESL. So ESL were the large part of the broadcast, the events, the operations side of things. But eventually, Riot Games Europe, so Berlin basically, they separated from ESL, hence why they moved away from Cologne, and they moved to Berlin as their new hotspot or headquarters in Europe. Hence why we lost D-Man and Joe Miller, again, very old names for those who are or aren't aware. But starting off, it was a very small team. It was maybe 15, 20 people. Now they probably have over 50. We had to expand on separate floors in our offices. But to answer your question, we definitely worked with a lot of other teams. I think broadcast, so it's funny because broadcasting, we had our own little corner of the office. The joke was we're loud and obnoxious, with the talent, with Shocks and Trevor and everything like that, which is true. We were like what's the word? We were not the cool kids. If anything, it's the opposite. We were just the noisy, irritate bunch that no one wanted to be around. So they just threw us into our own section of, literally we had 2 doors separating us. We had to buzz in through 2 doors just to get to us, which is pretty funny. But no, it depends on your role. So I can always explain. So obviously I was in the broadcast department, but we did work closely with obviously content. So, or I think they were technically marketing, but under marketing they were content. So this involves social media, because obviously we needed socials or content or marketing to produce content for us to put on socials to advertise League of Legends or the LEC or the EULCS. So there's one obvious one, right? So content, marketing, etc., PR, whatever. Human resources is just a natural one. You work for any company, you're gonna ideally you have a HR team that you can work with complaints, or you just moved in, help, access passes, etc. That's a boring one though. Business sides, that's more for seniors. So if you're a senior role, you obviously work with a lot of the finances, the growth, the development of whatever projects or visions you have. So I was obviously less so invested or less so involved with the development of the European competitive scene, but I was heavily involved with obviously the broadcasting, right? It was kind of out of my level at that stage. So it really depends. It depends on your role, but it's naturally you're gonna be working with other teams. It's just how it works, and not even just your own teams within Europe, right? Because we worked across offices. So as within the EU Berlin department, we work very closely with our North American partners. So over in Los Angeles and LA, and then we obviously worked with Korea and then China, And also, and then we have all these little more not minor regions, but we have these new regions such as the Spanish region, the German league, French, etc. So it's just naturally going to grow. But like I said, I mean, you have to be a bit more specific. Is there like a specific department you think you want to work with? But like I said, I can only name the very generic ones. Broadcasting makes sense for content. Business, HR, it just makes sense. Marketing was just unique in a way. But yeah, you work close with everyone. And if anything, one thing I regret not doing more so was like, like walking over to events and be like, hey, like, what are you working on? You need any help? Like anything, like asking them for advice. Like maybe I want to branch out my skills, right? Because I was just fully focused on broadcast production. However, I wanted to maybe understand how the event operations work out, right? I want to understand how they choose a location, how they determine capacity, right? What tickets do they use? Is it going to be remote? Is it going to be mobile apps? Is it going to be physical tickets? All these things, right? So that's something I wish I did more. But that's bouncing back to what I mentioned before about if you're in a position, take advantage of where you are, right? So because I was in the Berlin offices, I could have literally just walked less than a minute to the events team. They had their own little corner as well, and be like, hey, I've got some free time. Do you mind if I just shadow you? Maybe tell me a bit about what your role is. I wish I do that. I wish I did that, if anything. So I now know for the future, for any careers or any jobs I get, that I will actively talk to like other roles just to learn more about it, but also develop my own skills. Because it helps, right? Because like I said, as an observer, it helps for you to understand what a director does, how they operate. Same with any other role, like a producer, even graphics, right? Anything like that.
Have you, by any chance, ever worked with someone in the design department?
Design. Great question. So esports was a specifically unique one because esports, obviously broadcasting, but they respected all decisions in terms of when Riot Games LA, because LA is the large HQ, that's where the large Riot Games offices are based. But that's where they do all if you're talking about character design, so this is more about the game building itself, so game developing, unless you're talking about the artistic side of things, which obviously, from my experience, is less so. I feel like they obviously valued the on-air talents, the face of the broadcast. They valued their opinions. Like, I don't think it mattered in the end, but definitely from a game development point of view, they would sometimes ask the talent members, hey, this champion, do you think they need a buff? Do you think they need a nerf kind of thing? They never listened. I mean, we always complain, like, even though we tell them to, this is broken, they just, they don't listen. So it's like, whatever. So there's definitely, like, a vocal conversation or communication that could happen, whether they listen or not. I don't know. And there was always this divide between Europe versus North America. Even though we were supposed to work together, there was always this whole battle between, who's better, but also, like, they want to be better, so I don't know. There's a lot of politics involved. I wasn't solely heavily invested into it just because my role didn't really work alongside that. But little spoiler alert, little insight knowledge. You might be wondering like why was it EULCS and NALCS and then suddenly they branched off, right? A large part of that I can tell you was because the European department, the EULCS side, they wanted their own identity, hence why the LEC came about. Because we wanted a lot more control of our product, which is the European broadcast. Because literally, it was a carbon copy of the NA. It was just different faces, right? They had the NA talent, we had the EU talent. Everything was very similar. Everyone was like in a suit, in a shirt and tie. The graphics, the desk, everything was basically just copy and paste, just with, instead of EU, it was NA. And instead of red, it was blue or whatever. But we had enough of it. We said, hey, we don't like the control. We want to develop our own product. And then as soon as the LEC developed, you saw the huge differences, right? NA stood their ground and held on to the whole traditional suit and tie, smart, traditional sports, because they literally just copy and paste from traditional sports, right? Because of America. But then the LEC really changed it up, right? They had more casual clothing. They allowed more comedic, more like casual, more cringe content. And it worked. For that part of the year, I think a lot of praise was given to the LEC. First of all, from the detachment from the old brand. And they developed into something really new and really unique to them, which made sense, right? Because don't forget, the European market is not completely different, but very different to the North American market, right? Because also Europe is a fragmented continent. We have more than just one language, right? We have many countries. We have different borders, different regulations and laws, even things such as advertising. Like, there's so much to do with, again, this is probably a heavy topic, but TLDR, Europe is complicated when it comes to money and stuff because of borders, because of countries, right? Maybe an ad you want to play in Denmark doesn't really play well in Sweden, right? Yes, you know, they're close neighbors, however, but there's such a cultural difference, right? There's a huge maybe language difference, I don't know. Even the demographics might be different, right, from an age perspective. But like I said, I won't go into that, not right now anyway. So hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
So Kevin, we'll use this opportunity to transition into the workshop section
Cool.
of today's sesh. Once again, a big thank you to Kevin for the first portion of the talk. So folks, we are going to move, essentially Kevin's going to move into the production gallery now, and the second portion of the session is going to be a workshop. So if you just hold fire for a few moments, we'll take a short 2 to 3 minute break just while we set up, and then we'll crack back on. Okay, see you in a sec.
Actually, not to ruin the mood, so I'm not sure if we have time, but I do have another slide that it might be better to play before going into the workshop.
Yeah, definitely. Let's do
I just
that.
didn't want to like keep everyone if you want a break or anything
Of
like
course.
that. Sure. Sorry about that.
No, cool.
I blabbered on. This is just to make things a bit more easy to understand for the workshop. Oh, we got some beats. Cool. All right, so like I said, before we go into the workshop, we can work off of this. It's just a nice, fun little kind of breakdown. Like I said, I'm sure most of you are kind of aware what observing is, but a little engagement here. So, kind of crap quality, apologies. I changed the color of this though, ooh. Anyway, so we'll turn this into a nice little workshop, okay? So, give you some learning objectives. By the end of this session, you should be able to identify, hopefully, what the role of an observer consists of, what key functions to the success of observing, why observers are important to an esports broadcast, and when observers are utilized. So, we won't need to like go crazy into this, but normally I'd be like, okay, so what does the role of an observer play within an esports broadcast? Obviously, I mentioned the word so many times today, but I never actually asked you guys. Does anyone know what an observer is? Can't really explain right. Question, yeah. Yes, true. So like you're like almost like again. I mean, it's pretty explanatory, right? It's like you're the in-game director. You're there to control almost like the pacing, what you see, what the viewer sees in a way. Yes, perfect. Any other guesses? Even though I know you know the answers, so we'll move on. So I always call it the unsung heroes. In-game camera person, in-game directors, almost like the in-game technical director, which is kind of true, especially for League, because I'm literally, you know how you have two different cameras, you jump, you know, camera 1 take, camera 2 take. That's literally what I'm doing when I'm observing League of Legends. I'm literally jumping from one champion to another. That's literally just switching between different champions. That's literally just a different camera take. It just so happens that camera is just constantly moving and developing. So yeah, just something to consider. I'm happy to share this slide out. There's like more notes in there as well that goes into more details about it. If you're definitely interested in observing itself, there's a lot more in this. I'm happy to share it out to you guys and have a read. It's nothing fancy, but yeah. So just like a nice view. So there's Ifya there. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of it. She's one of the main observers now. I did train her, so woo. But I just want to show his pictures off. There's a nice, like, this is the old setup at least. I don't know if it's the same now. But yeah, I'll be honest though, they only bought us these because like, we got money, let's just splurge out because this is great marketing, right? Look how cool that looks, right? Everyone wants that in their home. But yeah, so this is obviously the main monitors, the one that they use to main observe, I guess. Side monitors, so this could be utilized in many different things, right? So maybe it's something you can consider for, I don't know, development in your own work setups. So if I'm correct, the right side is graphics. So these are like overlays that should go over here for the program feeds. I think, I don't even know. So main, this is normally programs. I don't know why. This could be graphics. This could be whatever you want, right? Left, this could be your Ops 2, your partner observer, so you can see what they're doing. So before going into a replay, you can double check on them to see like, okay, this is good. Because I know a lot of times when I'm training observers, we work alongside each other, but I'm also basically working, but also having to babysit them, right? So when I'm training them, I have to make sure that what they're bringing up is actually what I want. So you can monitor them alongside working as well. And then we call this big screen up here God mode, or what the North Americans call future client. It's basically, this is like ahead. It's like 5 or 10 seconds ahead. It's in future, hence the future client, whatever. But basically, we are in delay in the main feed, so we can see what's going on. And this is more complicated in terms of like different broadcasts. Some broadcasts don't use delay. Some broadcasts use delay because it makes it easier. Because you think about it, League of Legends, especially early game, there's 10 players, 10 champions, 3 lanes, 4 if you count the jungle. There's a lot going on. So it helps to have a secondary observer, maybe even a third observer, to help almost shot call. And this is something we'll go into detail about later on as well. So some key successes for an observer. Again, not everything, just some things to like maybe consider, especially if you want to observe. But you also notice that there are quite a few things that take from traditional just cinematography, right? Some typical like videography as well. So you have things, like that's probably the next slide, but you know, the quality of the shots, the sequences. But what I want to expand on is more like focused towards esports or league itself. So the game knowledge, which I call the macro. Then the mechanical ability, the micro. Communication and teamwork not only applies to observing, but obviously to the larger team in general, observing, you know, directors, producers, and that obviously applies to other outside of just broadcasting, right? So league ops want to talk to broadcast, we all want to talk to QC, quality control, we want to talk to event management, etc., right? Quick thinking, one thing I would say is that observing is definitely not for the light faint of heart. You have to, you know, think quick on your feet. You have to be able to perform under pressure. If things break, you know, you don't panic. Quality shot, like I said, these are more traditional kind of things about, oh, you know, what is the things you want to frame? What's the pacing going to be like? What are you showing? Preparation, again, applies to, if anything, most things. Prediction, so instead of like reacting, you want to like predict what's going to happen, so you're not going to get caught off guard. It's always better to predict than react, is what I always say. Because you're always going to be behind that 1 second or that split second, which is really, is like, you know, 1 second is a lot in broadcast, especially live broadcast. In-game delay, we kind of touched on that before. Storytelling and narrative, this is going to be a very big key word for anything, I think, broadcast-wise, especially for observing, because you are almost telling the story. You are building a story from 0-0 to whenever the nexus explodes. What happens from the start develops into what happens at the end, right? And that's something that you might think you're literally just there as an observer moving your mouse, but no, like something that I developed was my storytelling skills. I want to show the viewers how this game developed, right? How the early game went, how the mid game went, how it led to the end game. Plays and enjoys the game. Also a very important one. It makes sense to actually play the game, League of Legends, and to some extent, enjoy it. I'll be honest, after playing League for like, at that time, over like 7 years, now coming 10, I don't play it as much nowadays, but playing the game and then working it. Basically, I lived on League. I played the game after work. I worked League. You know, I joked that I got paid to play and watch people play the game, which is like a dream job, don't get me wrong. But then it gets to a point where I live and breathe League of Legends. I get sick of it. Most of the time, a lot of people after the show, they go home, they're like, I don't want to touch League. I want to play a different game. And that happened a lot. It's funny because like walking around the office, you'd be like, oh, okay. Who, you know, because during our breaks, we could freely just go into like the PC bang and be like, hey, who wants to play a game? And we're like, not League. Well, let's play a game ARAM, I don't know. Well, obviously enjoying the game, knowing the game, that's kind of standard. So this is, again, what I mentioned about the more traditional cinematography, videography side of things. So for anyone here who is actually studying maybe like video production or cinematography, whatever, these are some probably familiar terms. You know, in terms of framing, you know, the rule of thirds potentially apply, which we'll see an example. Smoothness, steady speeds, lead room, quality of the sequence, like pacing, what information you're delivering. So what are you trying to tell the audience? What are you showing? Is this relevant? Again, syncing up the audio from what the casters are saying to what you're showing them from the visual perspective. Storytelling narrative, you're going to see that a lot. And timing. Okay, now we're getting something a bit more interactive. So, CSGO. Example. Question to all you. How would you observe this scene? So I'm going to set the scene for you. So there's a terrorist. So hopefully everyone here is at least familiar with CSGO. Basically 2 teams, CT, T, terrorists, counter-terrorists, etc. So terrorist is actually me. That's actually my gameplay. I'm holding a corner at D Mirage in the B site at the bench. The last CT has an AWP or an op about to turn the corner. So note, there is one CT and there's two terrorists. You might be able to identify that on the minimap ever so briefly. So think about it. Just, you don't have to shout it out, but think about it. How would you observe this, okay? And by observe it, like what you show, perspectives, etc., right? And CSGO first-person games are unique because you have the first-person angles, but you also have like the third-person bird's-eye one. Applies to Valorant as well, of course. So let's have a look at maybe the, this is the question again. So this is, I won't spoil it right now, so I'm just gonna move on to like the actual perspective. So let's, for example, say this might be an example of the CT perspective, right? So you set the scene, you show what's going on, and then you follow just the CT's angle. He has the AWP, he aims down, I die. I know, I suck. I couldn't hold the angle. Maybe you consider the terrorist angle of actually the terrorist getting shot. And rip me. So, question for you all is, which perspective would you probably try and hold? Would you show the CT or would you show the terrorist? Let's just shout out answers. What would you show? CT, okay. Anyone else? CT? Interesting, okay. Any reasons? Anyone show the terrorist side? True. True. Okay, like I said, there's no right or wrong answer here. There's only like opinions. I definitely have my opinions on it, so we'll actually see what we go with. So I think I decided on the CT side. I think I did, yes. So counter-terrorist, normally how you do it was, the way I do most observing is I follow these rules, is you set the scene, so you provide the audience with information, hence the example of this third person or the bird's eye view. So you're setting the scene. You're allowing the audience to take in the environment to see what's going on, right? So you're setting the scene of, oh, there's one CT, they're about to breach, and they're about to cross this angle, there's gonna be a fight. So you know there's gonna be a fight here, the bomb's also planted, so there's pressure there. And personally, I would choose the CT's perspective because one, it's a clutch situation. Two, I feel like the op is just like a very powerful weapon. It's like one shot, it's like you miss, you die, you shoot it, it's like, whoa. It's just like, it's an iconic weapon for CSGO, at least in my opinion, right? So yeah, it's clutch, it's a big weapon, and it's just exciting to see, right? It's more exciting to see the 1v2 than the 2v1. Again, my opinion. So who here they would show the terrorist one? No, don't worry about it. Like I said, there's no right or wrong answers. And someone said, no one said terrorist? All right. Then we'll just see if CT wins, yeah. I'm kidding. But yeah, this is my opinion, like I said. But the thing I want you to take away from this is, from any observing thing, you can apply it from League to CSGO to whatever, right? Is first, set the scene. Provide the audience with the information, show them what's going on. So in League of Legends, I would maybe zoom out a bit. I would show, like, let's say there's a jungle gank going in the lane, right? I would show the jungle coming in. Maybe I would do a nice little vision toggle to be like, ooh, excitement, right? They don't see them coming in, but we do. Ho, what's gonna happen, right? So you set the scene, and then you let it play out. So set the scene, let it play out. Set the scene, let it play out. And here we set the scene, and here we're playing out. And sadly, I died, because, yeah, we don't talk about that. And then moving on, so we mentioned the rule of thirds. So again, we can take some traditional examples and apply it, because it literally is. You're literally just a camera, right? Framing guidelines, not necessarily a rule. Vocal points, interest points. Most of you probably are aware of this, I'd assume. Let's apply it to this example. So a CSGO example of the rule of thirds is, it's kind of messed up here, because like I just quickly screenshotted this, so yeah. So nice little fit here, and I'm missing here, but you get what I'm saying, right? There's a nice dead space here. And like I said, it's not a rule you have to follow, but from a visual point of view, I'm finding it appealing. Like I said, I'm not saying this is the right way to do it or the definite way of doing it, but it definitely works, and there's a reason it works, and there's a reason why this applies to even things like photography and general cinematography, videography, etc. And we can apply it to League of Legends. And this is something that, this just naturally comes about, in my opinion anyways. But yeah, very good example in the mid lane. We have, the blue mid, and we have the red mid, whatever. I don't know why. Is that Nautilus? I don't know who that is. That's Olaf. Never mind. But yeah, you can see the rule of thirds being applied here, and it's kind of, I like to think it's kind of obvious of why you want to do it, because you don't want to just frame, like imagine you centered the Olaf, or you centered, is that a Veigar? Ziggs? I don't know. It's Callister. Okay, what do they do in mid? What's this meta, hey? But yeah, like you don't want to be centering this, 'cause, right? Imagine if you centered the Callista, if she was here, then Olaf would be down here. He would pretty much be off the screen, right? And you don't know what's going on. Who knows? Maybe Olaf's about to throw an axe, about to land, and then chase her down. That'd be one dead Callista, I'd feel. So again, I don't think I need to kind of explain this. Hopefully not. But like I said, I'm happy to explain this in details another time. But it kind of makes sense. This is a better example of rule of thirds. So, and pulling in the example of lead room. So for example, let's say we see a character, a champion, Bard in this example, sieging a turret, even though he's more defending. You want to show, the setting the scene. The scene we're setting here is, oh, Bard is coming to defend the turret being sieged by Zed. I don't know why a Bard would do that. But this is the story we're setting, right? Oh, he's defending. What's going to happen? So then obviously we provide lead room, right? Because if we centered Bard, we wouldn't be able to see the Zed. The audience might not even know the Zed exists there unless they're looking at the minimap. And let's be honest, we don't look at the minimaps here, right? But yeah, just a nice perfect example of the rule of thirds. And we even show lead room, right? We show them what the Bard is running towards. Why is this Bard running in this direction? There's a danger here. There's an objective here. Defend. But there's also a danger here in terms of Zed's probably going to one-shot him, probably. I don't know. So that's just a nice example I'd like to show from a perspective of application. Working with in-game delay, this is a heavy topic, and I won't dwell too much onto this. Like I said, I'm happy to discuss this more in details later on. But there's a lot to go on about delays. Would you use delay? Why do we use delay? Which games use delay? What happens if you can't use delay? There's multiple reasons for this, right? With great power comes great responsibility. Yeah, throw that in. Key bindings and programs. This is something we'll work on in the workshop. You'll see it if you're coming in or from the big screen. And the importance of observing, I'll just read off some of these. So it allows for information within a game to be streamlined and delivered via a single output feed to the audience. Because don't forget, in the end, what the audience sees is basically one screen, right? So you're in control of what the audience sees. Yeah, you can amplify that by putting maybe a picture-in-picture up, so you get two feeds. But there's always going to be one major feed. So you have to somehow condense the whole game or the whole all the action into one view and make it the best you can. To make sure no action is missed and I need to edit that out, will be near impossible to spectate most multiplayer esports titles from just a player's perspective. Consider battle royales, right? Like Fortnite, maybe even Apex. We have 80 players. I always mention about how difficult it would be to even just observe that. I mean, you even need a large team, many observers, and then a main observer to shout what the main. Basically, you have League of Legends. We would normally work with a main observer, so Obs 1, Obs 2, Obs 3. And the main observer is Obs 1, who's predominantly going to be 90% of the screen you see. Obs 2 is going to be the instant replays. Obs 3 might be cinematic shots or whatever, right? However, with something like Battle Royales, imagine you probably need 10 observers. I mean, if you have the logistics and the funding and the budgets and everything, you could literally have an observer for every player. That's not viable, though. I mean, you're not going to have that. But I'm sure Jacob has experience with working with Battle Royales, Fortnite, right? I think the setup is you have a main or lead observer, right? And then they take shots. And this is almost similar to traditional. When I worked in a boxing event, so this is moving away from esports, when I worked for a boxing event, how the EVS operators worked in that workflow was we all have different angles, and then when we get a nice shot, we yell. We had to fight for our shots. I got the best shot, use my shot, director. We had to fight for that. So that's something I learned. We never had to do that in League of Legends, which is a great thing from actually expanding outwards. I learned a lot just from working that one traditional sports show in boxing, and it's great. And also, I love the fact that, I don't love it, but in boxing, obviously, you get the punches, but then you get the super slow-mo, you get the, whoa. And then I was like, damn, I like this. Let's apply to League of Legends. So all my replays, I now do slow-mos on the deaths. Or maybe I zoom in. The last hit, I slow-mo it, and then I zoom in on the dead body kind of thing. So that's inspiration from boxing. So I always say, and my manager said this as well, don't give up opportunities to work other things. Because you don't want to be just solely focused on esports. You learn a lot from other things. Traditional sports, I would argue maybe news, even though news is kind of just sit there and push buttons from what I heard, but hey, I don't know. But yeah, if you have the opportunity, take on, right? Even from different games. From League of Legends, I learned a lot from, working and looking at people work at CSGO, FPS games. Two different genres, but a lot to take away from them. And finally, to assist in delivering the best experience through storytelling, narrative driving via in-game replays, video content, and quality of shots and sequences. And just a little overview of what my day in life as an observer was. So obviously I like to frame it as a pre-production or post-production, actual production itself, and then office days, right? So I won't expand too much on it. Some of them pretty self-explanatory. But here's an example of what I did in my typical workflow, from office, from actual in studio, and then actual like pre-show, post-show, etc. You don't need to do this. I mean, you can. We can talk about like, okay, what games don't need observers? I mean, I can spoil it for you. Do you need an observer for like Super Smash Bros., right? They already have like an inbuilt thing, right? It's just it follows the characters around, etc. Do you need a observer for card games, like maybe Hearthstone or Tales of Runeterra? Is that what? No, Runeterra. One of them. But do you need an observer for that? Now you don't. Okay, have you seen how Hearthstone works? How it's very finicky, but how they like have to show the flip perspective on one of them. I mean, personally, I don't think it looks good, but there's only so much you can do, right? But maybe there's someone here who can be like, hey, I can develop this and make this unique. Right? Definitely push for it, because I hate watching those like just ugly, just mirrored images. It's the best they can do for now, but there are definitely ways to do it. I mean, it's also because the Riot Games have spaghetti code, probably. But normally I do questions here, but we can move on to the session. Sorry that took so long, but yeah, we'll move on to the workshop. That's just more of an overview, and we'll get into more of the nitty-gritty examples of the League of Legends side of things. Cool. Sorry for taking so much time.
Perfect. Awesome. Let's rock and roll. So, folks, we'll just be a couple of minutes, and then we'll also be asking for a couple of volunteers. So if you just sit tight for just a moment, we'll see you in a moment. We're going to stick this.
2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Mic check, mic check. Not yet. Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2. We want to do or change. So I have my bindings already, so you might have the default ones. But the first thing I want you all to change is click down here at camera controls. Scroll down, and near the bottom of camera controls, you want to bind this to something. I'm going to work off of my bindings for now. So drag, scroll, lock, bind that to Z temporarily. Just a heads up, if you bind anything within the spectator mode, it will change your in-game player mode, which is annoying. Just to be aware that if you do use any of these weird buttons, like if you use Z for actually playing League of Legends, you might have to rebind that to what you had it before. But it's just for teaching purposes, it's easier to work off of my own bindings, just to make it easier, me saying Z or whatever, okay? So yeah, first of all, bind, drag, scroll, lock to Z. Also, I would tell you to unbind drag, scroll, so this should be middle button. I think by default this is MB3, so your middle mouse button. I would recommend highly to unbind that. Reasons why is because I'll show you. So if we have this bound, so basically let's see what Z does. So drag, scroll, lock, if I press Z now, so if I move my mouse, this is what it looks like, right? Nothing happens. If I play League of Legends, you're used to probably moving it to the sides, or unless you're a scrub and you play with lock screen, so I don't know. Sorry for anyone I offended. But yes, if I press Z now, you now realize that you are now in drag, scroll, locked. Ooh. And congratulations, that's how you observe. So thanks for attending my session. And yeah, no, I'm kidding. But this is the basics of League of Legends observing. You want to be in drag, scroll, lock pretty much 99% of the time. The only times you don't want to be in drag, scroll, lock are for very niche situations, like you want to click around the map. Very rarely do you do this because it exposes your mouse. Very unique, like maybe if you're using OBS as a feed capture, you can actually hide your cursor, so that's a nice benefit of using OBS technically. However, like I said, 99% of the time you want to be in drag, scroll, lock. Then this gives you this smooth camera over here. And this is how you normally would observe, or what you're used to seeing. But like I said, this is literally the basics of observing. This is the first thing you want to be doing. So bind, drag, scroll, lock, for those just in case. Hotkeys, camera control, scroll down to drag, scroll, lock, bind that to Z. So I mentioned before, drag, scroll, it's default binded to mouse button free, and why you should unbind it. If you don't unbind it, this is why, or this is what could happen. So let's say you're in drag, scroll, lock,
and maybe you're zooming in and out for the zoom, and then oops, you accidentally hit mouse button free. Oh no, you're stopped now. So unless you want to do that for whatever reason, most of the time you don't. It's more of a mistake, right? So to get rid of that possibility, just unbind it. Get rid of it, you don't need it, because like I said, you're more than likely once going to accidentally hit mouse button free. So unbind that, and that's the first thing you need. Cool. So like I said, this is already the basics of observing. You can literally hop into a spectate game and practice this. You can practice framing, so I'm just going to unroll for now, just to get some movement going on. But yeah, you can literally move around, follow someone leaving out of the base, whatever. Zoom in a bit more. And that's like the very bare basics. So you can literally start practicing on your own right now. No excuses, you can go home, play League, spectate your games, spectate a friend's game, and you can practice your framing. So you can practice already framing, so I'm going to frame a zillion. And there we go, rule of thirds. And this is, we don't want to be... We want to give lead room for obvious reasons, right? We're following the zillion. We're kind of touching on the whole framing touch point right now, but there's a reason why we give with lead room, right? Because you want to see what he's running to. What is he running to? Is he running here to defend this turret that's about to be sieged? You don't want to be framing characters like this. Like, why would you follow Kai's like this? Because we don't want to see what's behind her, right? There's nothing interesting here. We know what's back here is the base. We want to see what she's running towards, what's her objective, etc., right? But sorry, I'm jumping ahead a bit. Let's go back to the options, the hotkeys. So we did drag scroll, which is the most important thing. I would just say copy everything I have here, but that's not going to be very helpful. So I'm going to go through the key ones. So there's one called show scoreboard here, and that's tab. This is what you're used to. So in a game of League of Legends, you're used to probably just tap, Oh wait, no, I bound this. So default is actually this, it's hold. So in game, you're used to League of Legends where you hold tab and it brings up the scoreboard, right? Your bills, everyone's gold, etc. So that should be default in spectator. However, personally, I like to unbind this or change it to a toggle. Right now it's a hold. I change it to a toggle. So now you can toggle the scoreboard. And this is what we called it tab down because of the default bindings. You could call it whatever you want. Scoreboard down, whatever. I like tab down because I'm used to it. And it's also short. But basically I rebound my tab. So this gets rid of the hold. As I mentioned before, if you go into a game of League of Legends with these saved bindings, you're bringing up the scoreboard or whatever, it would actually be a toggle now. So do remember, if you're rebinding it now, to change it back to a hold. I think this also has a default to a, O as well. I think default, the scoreboard is actually O. So the letter O itself. But like I said, I changed it. I tried to reset it just to make it easier for you guys. But for simpler explaining purposes, I guess just work off of what I have now. But like I said, if you do go into a game of League of Legends, just remind yourselves that rebind the show scoreboard to hold if you're used to using that, which I assume most of you will be. Cool. So we worked through drag scroll, which is Z. We worked through tab. And question for everyone to think about is why do we need to tab down, right? Why do we need to do this? Well, the answer is you want to create more room. Let's say there's a team fight breaking out, right? Instead of like zooming out to make everything look like ants, you could tab down to create more space. It basically helps with framing. You don't want all this junk, blocking what's going on. Because in a team fight, you don't need to look at the builds. You don't need to look at, the KDAs and stuff. So you drop that down. Let's say there's a dragon fight going on, right? We drop it down so there's more room. Awesome. So that's tab down, which is the command in itself. We have to sync that up with the director, but we also get a foot pedal. So main obs observer 1 would normally have to say tab down, hit a foot pedal to drop the graphics, because you're probably used to a lot of graphical overlays on broadcasts. So we'd have to somehow sync that up with the broadcast itself. So we'd have to say tab down, hit the foot pedal, hit tab down. But we'd have to perfectly sync that. Moving on, so you might be thinking, okay, we're tabbing now, but there's still this ugly thing here. This is, I believe, called the timeline. I don't know what the official name for it is. Let's find out. It's called the toggle time controls. Okay. Default is U. You can always keep that binded by default. We never really had this in the past, so this is actually really nice. But obviously, as main ops, you don't want this up because it spoils the game. You don't want the audience to see what goes on. So you can obviously want to hide that. Default U, hide that before you go into the game. You could also press I. So this is a unique thing as well. Bottom left here, you see the interface visibility. You can click it, or you can just press I, default I. And little like checkbox thing you want to do here, a little checklist when you go into the game. I recommend turning off chat. So if I hit enter now, you actually see the chat. And you want to be careful of that because why? Well, sometimes League of Legends players can be a bit, toxic, let's just say, in all the nice ways. So to avoid that, you just want to hide it. Now the weird thing with League of Legends and the spaghetti coding is, just because it's off here doesn't mean it's actually completely off. So what I do is you turn it on and then you turn it off again. So make sure you turn it off and on just to make sure it's off. So that's one thing you do. So first, turn chat off. You can also turn off the time controls here, but like I said, you have the default U bindings, etc. That's all I do. It's chat off and time controls off. You can also flick the objective timers here. And you might notice that these are the esports objective timers. Your default ones might look like ugly things bottom here. We can change that in the settings. I'm not sure if we'll have time to do that now, sadly, but that is something you can do. You can also bind that to a button. So I rebound mine to B. So toggle objective timers, you probably want that on, unless, for example, your broadcast is working with their own API built objective timers. But a good rule of thumb is to turn that on. Like I said, you can do that in here as well, objective timers. So objective timers on, you want the chat off ideally, and time controls off. And just remember, these all have their own bindings. So U by default for the time controls. Chat, you have to do this sadly. There probably is a button for it, but I haven't figured it out. And objective timers, which I have as B. But you have to rebind that, or like I said, you can do it from the interface. Cool. Let's move on. Other key bindings are default A. If you hit that, you are brought into what we call Teamfight UI. So anyone here who watches League of Legends broadcast will be familiar with this as almost like the replay screen, right? This is what we want it to be. We want this to be known as the replay screen or the replay UI. But we call it Teamfight UI or replay UI, whatever you want. So the reasons why I always teach that if you're ever going to be doing a replay, pretty much you're going to be in this UI, unless you're hiding everything for like a cinematic or for whatever reason, right? And the reasons why you want to pretty much always emphasize this UI is because of, well, you want the audience to see this and be like, oh, we're in a replay. Yeah, you might have like a replay bug in the corner here. However, from a visual point of view, you want the audience to see this layout. They see the health bars at the bottom here, and everything else is hidden at the top. You want them to see that and be like, okay, we now know we're in a replay without having to look for the bug. It's obvious most of the time, but that's just a short thing. You know, different producers might have different rules or different like operations. I've seen people literally just tap down and they have everything up anyways, even though you have this up and stuff like that. But like I said, that's down to personal opinion, down to the producers and decisions. But personally, from what I'm used to, and I think it works best, is to have, if you're ever in a replay Teamfight UI, which is default A, and this is pretty much what Observer 2 and Observer 3 will be using most of the time. Observer 1 will very, very rarely ever be using this. If anything, Observer 1 is pretty much in the main one, and with just tab down. Very unique situations would be like maybe you hide your hold HUD because you're doing like a pip, or you're doing like some fancy overlays like a base race UI, whatever. Cool, so those are the very key ones. You got drag scroll, we have the tab down, we have these other UIs to shift around. We made sure we turned off chat, we turned on objective timers, etc, etc. There might be times you actually want chat on, but it's very rarely. Like maybe there's like it's more of a fun tournament. You're sure players aren't gonna be like, you know, toxic or whatever and say bad stuff in the chat. But like I said, it's a very dangerous thing, right? You don't want players to type up something that's gonna be rather controversial or hurt the broadcast in a way. So it's better just to turn it off. Normally, if I ever do want to show the chat, I'll do it from the Observer 2 or free screen, and maybe they can like chop off their feed, they can pip it up, or what I've done in the past is I took a screenshot, and then I literally just pipped up that screenshot, which looks really good, and it's something that the official broadcasts don't really do so much, so that's like a little innovation that I think I pushed forwards, and I want to see more of anything. Cool. Anyways, so moving on, more key bindings. So again, working on defaults here, so if you hit 1, you might need to like move around. I would recommend unpausing the game, so you can unpause with P or unpause with 0, the number 0, just to roll the game forward a bit. Or you can open up the time shift just to move it, just so there's like some time and space, because if you're at 0-0, everyone's going to be in the base. So just jump forward in time where everyone's in lanes and just pause it there with P. And then if you hit the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you would now realize that, hey, this is you being a in-game director, you're vision mixing here in-game. And self-explanatory, pretty much 1 to 5 is blue team. Starting from top left is top, jungle, so top is 1. It doesn't help that these guys aren't in order, or are they? I don't know. Okay, no, it works. Never mind. So yeah, 1 is Karma, which is blue team top lane. 2 is Jungle, Viego. 3 is Vel'Koz. You might have to double tap if you pause. If you're in drag scroll, it jumps instantly. So like I said, just maybe for ease sake, just drag scroll. If you feel like your mouse is wandering, you can always double tap drag scroll, and then it resets it, and just don't touch the mouse. You don't need to touch the mouse right now. But there are times where like new observers will be like, oh my god, my mouse is drifting. And let's say like you whip it by accident and it's moving too fast. You can easily save that by just double tapping drag scroll on and off like that. I mean, you can literally just flick it on once, but you know it shows the cursor. That's just a nice recovery. If you feel like you're like, you know, your mouse is breaking or whatever, you can easily just double tap just to like secure it. Just a little note there. But yeah, so again, let's be in drag scroll just for practice sake, and then jump around. Now you don't have to double tap to jump. So as we mentioned, 1 is Karma, top lane blue, jungle, then mid lane for 3, AD carry for 4, and 5 is support. And opposites is for the red team, but that's going to be Q, W, E, R, and T. You can obviously rebind these to your liking, but we're going to be working again off of defaults just for easy of teaching examples. You know, I've had colleagues of mine who actually rebound things. Like if you look to your right as the volunteers, you see like the keypad. You see that numlock. I've seen them bind numlock to top lane blue, 7 as jungle, and it just goes down. It's a bit weird. I didn't like it, but hey, I like to keep it from default because I was training a lot of people, so it makes sense to use that. So rebind it to whatever you like, but for teaching purposes, we can stick with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So again, now you know how to use drag scroll. You can literally go into a game with a friend or whatever, or with a partner, and have one of you be obs 1 and one of you obs 2. And the nice way to practice this is to like just go, okay, obs 1, whatever. Just jump between champions. So like if I just unroll this or whatever, I could say, okay, let's jump to Karma. You hit Karma. Okay, so now I say, okay, stand by, jump to Rek'Sai, and Rek'Sai, which is W. Okay, we got Viego ganking top lane on my screen. You might not see it in yours. So stand by Viego, go Viego now, and that's 2. So you can already practice this. And like I said, you're literally just you're just switching. You're literally just the vision mixer within the game itself. You're switching different cameras, you're switching different feeds, etc. That's all you're doing. So that's something again you can do in like as an observer is to practice. You practice framing with drag scroll, and then you can practice jumping to different characters or champions with someone who's working with you as like an obs 1 and obs 2, like a partner duo observing team. And that's the basis of like moving around. There's also vision toggle. So hopefully default is F. That's like full screen. So I'm going to zoom out, and there is like a binding for zoom. I believe it's Control Shift Z. I'm not 100% sure about this because in the past you'd have to actually bind this in the settings. For those who haven't seen this before, this is what the League of Legends Summoner's Rift looked zoomed out. I know it looks amazing, right? Absolutely amazing. Riot Games never liked us showing the zoom off because obviously it shows like it looks ugly and it's all broken. The reason for why they have it like this is because they want the game to be accessible. You know, you don't need to have a crazy fast computer to actually run things. So you actually see a lot of these actually assets are actually missing. And if you had like a program like Skin Spotlight or Creator Sweep or what do they call it in the official one, Lead Director, behind these actually are missing. There's like nothing behind you. It's just like a see-through wall. But you never see that as a player. But you know, messing around with the actual camera itself, you can actually see that behind these it's just empty. And that's just to make the game as least intensive on the computer as possible. Anyway, that's just some little backstory there. So F, if you don't have it bound, then it's the top thing in the toggle fog of war. And this is normally used for things like, cinematic shots, but let's say like dragon is here, but there's no vision here. Then you can toggle F and it shows it. So this is normal default where you have fog of war. If I press F, then it exposes it. So let me just try and find a dragon that has actually spawned. Hopefully no one crowds around here. Good, no one wards. This is rank 1. Rank 1 league and no one's warded dragon. I mean, I guess it's early game, no one needs to ward here. But here, so let's say no one's here, right? There's no wards and no players, I can't see it. However, I can also toggle F. So this is basically, it gets rid of fog of war. And boom, hello dragon. Now I can see what dragon is, I can show what the next one is going to be, etc, right? I can show the fact that there's no wards there, whatever. But that's just like nice little vision toggle. So moving on to vision. So F is full vision. Again, you want to show things going on. F1 is blue team's vision. So if I wanted to see what blue team sees, F1. Now you can see that we can't see any of the red team members, so we only see what blue team sees. The opposite of that is F2. Now we see red team's vision. Now we see all the walls, etc. And default is F3. So those should be default bound. Like I said, if you need to change them, they're just here. So F1, blue team's vision. F2, red team's vision. F3, default. And then F for full vision. And like I said, there are different usage for these things. For example, let's say I want to set up a gank. So I'm just going to find a gank real quick. Wherever this is a gank or 1v1. Oh, it's a gank. Perfect. So there's a top lane gank here. So let's use it as an example. How would I tell this story? So just to play it out, we see Viego kills top lane with gank because Jace did not ward. What a scrub. Deserves to die. I see. Oh my god, I'm sorry. Anyways, so how do we let's say frame this, right? So let's say mobs 1. First of all, we want to hide the time controls because I don't want people to see what's going on. Cool. So we know from, let's say, my Ops 2 went, okay, Viego ganks top lane, and first blood goes to blue team, Jace dies. Cool. So let's frame this, okay? So let's tell the story. He finishes blue, and we now know that he has no wards. Jace, what are you doing? No wards. So now we see Viego approaching. I mean, he does grab first. But you can do a vision toggle here. You can show that Jace doesn't have a ward yet. And by F2, oh no, he has no vision. And Viego's coming. He's still coming. And a beauty of like champions such as Viego is they have invisibility. So you can actually put it in the perspective of Jace. Again, this is to build excitement. This is to make it so like, oh my god, I'm in Jace's shoes right now. What does he see? He sees his ability. But you know, we know Viego's actually here, just invisible. However, if you want to make it a bit more exciting and you want to put it, us into the perspective of the red team, Jace, like you'd have no idea where he is. Like, where is Viego? When actually, he's actually here, just invisible. But if you left it on default, we can see it, it's not as exciting. However, if you, in my opinion, put it in Jace's vision, you'll soon see Viego just pop up out of nowhere. And boop, there he is. But that looks much better than, in my opinion, just framing it in default. So we frame this as default, this is just it, right? We just kind of see it play out. Okay, cool, whatever. So that's just one example of storytelling, right? You're building excitement. You can also do like pacing, right? So a nice thing I always say is, you've seen action films, right? There's that meme of, is it the film Taken or something, where they have the 100 camera shots for that guy jumping over a fence or something like that, and it's very fast paced. You could do something similar here, right? So you can keep it slow paced, no jump shots or very slow jump shots. But then as soon as something builds up, you can be like, oh, jump, jump, jump to Jace, jump. What's going on? Does he see? Does he not see? Kind of thing. So there's like the whole situation with pacing. If there's a lot going on, you might want to be jumping to different people to show like, oh, there's something going on. So this is literally taking it from cinematography. But that's really like, that's more advanced stuff. But again, you can always easily apply that. And this applies more to like, let's say one team is doing a Baron, another team is doing a Dragon situation. But that's just like a nice example of how we maybe use Vision. Let's do that just once more. Again, I want to build excitement. We know Viego's going to gank top and Jace dies. We know he has no wards. I'm going to be like, okay, look, he has no wards. He has no idea Viego is here. We could also be like, oh, where's the enemy jungler? The enemy jungler's bot lane. What's going to happen? And then we know he dies first. And there's first blood. And boom. And this is perfect. This leads us on to how we can then replay that. So normally, first blood, we try and replay it just because there's a lot of downtime. And it's actually a fight bot lane, I believe. Yep, okay. So we're gonna put our volunteers to the test here. And boom! Okay, perfect. So, volunteers, we're gonna work with having multiple Obs 2s. So, I'm going to ask you all to be my Obs 2s as Obs 1. I want you to all prepare me a replay. So let's talk about that workflow. So, the workflow for me is, do you remember which UI we would use for replays? Yeah, it's A. So Teamfight UI. Yep, perfect. So just remember, like, you want to be in this UI. Just apply that as a rule right now. You always want to be in this replay UI, Teamfight UI, whenever you're in a replay. And I'm never gonna take your feed. I'm never gonna tell the director take my feed until I see that. Let's say I have another monitor. Okay, just a blanket rule of thumb for now. It's like I said, it's obviously not the case. But cool. So basically, I'm gonna be like, let's play it out live. I'm gonna be like, okay, Observer 2 Z, because it's 2 now. Could you get me a replay of that? You'd be like, okay, I'm gonna set that up. So how do you set it up? Well, first of all, you have to find your endpoint. And well, your endpoint is basically where you're gonna be paused, right? So just before that, I briefly want to talk about time control. So P is pause. You know, you press P, you unpause. you have minus, which is just above the P. That slows it down. You can look at this number here. It says 1x right now, which is obviously normal speed. If you hit minus, it goes to half speed, 0.5. Hit it again, it goes to 0.25. So I just call it normally slow-mo and super slow-mo. You can use whatever terminology you use. Slow-mo, super slow-mo, half speed, and quarter, I don't know. And then you have the opposite with the plus. You have 1x for normal, you have 2 times, you have 4x, and you have like 8x and whatever. Well, 8x is pretty much only used to like fast forward to get to a place, or if like maybe you're showing like a macro movement shot. But we won't go into too much detail. And then we have backspace, which goes back 15 seconds. Again, you can find all these bindings in, let's see, it should be time shift. Here we go. So we have pause for play and pause, slow down, speed up. So 0, this is a very important one, and then backspace is 15 seconds. 0 is a very important one, so you might ask myself why. So I'm going to use an example. Let's say I'm going to have this rough in. Okay, I'm going to replay this guy's game. Okay. I'm speeding up right now. I'm used to it, you know, to get to a place quicker, you don't want to watch it through. I don't want, you know, if I'm trying to get somewhere quickly, I don't want to watch 1 second. You have the options to manipulate time, speed things up, because literally live broadcast, everything has to happen now and quick. You know, I want that replay now, because if we don't play it now, it's going to be too late, or we might not have time to play it because another kill happens, etc. Cool. So 0. So another rule of thumb is if you're going to play a replay, you pretty much 90% of the time want to use 0 to play it out rather than P. Why? It's because let's say you pause, let's say you're fast forwarding and you paused here. Okay, I'm paused at 4x. If you unpause it, you're gonna unpause with the time shift manipulation. And you might not want that. And I've seen this a lot. I've worked with a lot of people who've done this. Like, okay, I'm 8x, okay, I'm in, I'm ready, 3, 2, 1, fly replay, unpause, and oh crap, like it plays out the whole thing in fast speed, right? You don't want that. So rule of thumb I always tell people starting out is, it doesn't matter what speed you're at, but always unpause into a replay with 0, because then it gets rid of that error potential for you know, being in time shift. Because like I said, right now, I do have, I should do this quickly, I do have 8x, right? But if this was my rough in, if I hit 0, it defaults everything to 1x anyways. So good rule of thumb. Now, like I said, there are obviously rules why that you might be useful. You know, maybe you want to start off slow-mo, maybe there's not a lot of in, right? Maybe you want to actually start off with a time manipulation, which is slow-mo, or fast forward for whatever reason. So now I am actually playing this out in slow-mo first. So I hit P. It might look nicer. You build it up and then you hit 0 to normal speed it. You can obviously, you know, start half speed, pause, and then just press plus because it goes to 1. But 0 is a good default to use. And that's just like an example of maybe why you would use P instead of 0. But good rule of thumb, hit 0. I'm just going to use the example of why maybe again you might want to use it with speed up, but normally I like to like maybe you want to like start the replay in you know, in 2x. I personally see that as a mistake. Like there are better ways to do that, right? In my opinion, I would rather roll it like this. So I'd rather roll it in 1x. Let's say I want to speed it up for whatever reason. I want to roll it in 1x. So 0 and then speed up. You show it normal, you show it what the audience is used to seeing. They're used to seeing, you know, the speed, the movement at this pace, and then you speed up. You don't want to start the audience in a unfamiliar environment because that's going to make them feel weird or whatever. But again, I'm just going to say it. Rule of thumb, 0. Anyways, back to what we're doing. So first thing you want to do for Ops 2 to set up a replay is you get the perfect in. So let's try and find out what the perfect in for this replay is. So let's work on this together. So I'm just watching it through. So I would say, I mean, I want everyone else's opinion on this as well. So obviously I would probably do it before like 3 minutes 35, just because we see, if say we played it from here. So 3, 2, 1, roll replay. We literally see Viego already running with the spell. I would prefer to show Viego running after crab and then use the spell. At least guaranteed to use the spell before going to the shot, right? You're basically starting a shot midway through. You didn't set the scene. Don't forget, we always want to set the scene first and then go in. And if you jumped in at 3:35, you're already halfway through what the scene was, which was the gank. So I personally would start roughly around 3:27. This would be my in, because I want to show that, oh, Viego has just finished doing the crap, and then he goes top lane. Then we can do all that fancy vision stuff with like, okay, look, oh, he's invisible, and then suddenly he pops up because, whoop, peekaboo, there we go. So let's use that as my in. We're gonna say free, I think 27 was what I said. Yeah, 27. We can obviously do like 28 or whatever. Let's say free 28. Free 28 is our in. Now, and does anyone have any opinions on whether that should be the in or not? Does everyone agree that that's a good in? Do you think that's a good in? Yeah? Okay, so I'm gonna like twist it around and say, actually, that's a good in, but that's not the perfect in. It's not the in we actually want. Why? It's because we gotta factor in buffer. Most like video, let's say you're playing tape over broadcast, you always want to apply 3 to maybe 5 seconds of buffer. Not always, again, very rush rule of thumb, but rule of thumb, buffer is always good. Why is that the case? Why do you think buffer would be good? Transitions, yes. So you might have like a maybe a 1 second stinger, maybe have like a 0.5 second stinger. However, that 1 second, again, as I mentioned in any broadcast, is very crucial. Because 1 second of this is already him running top lane, miss the whole crab being down, etc. We don't get a chance to show the wards. So buffer is important. So actually, our perfect in isn't actually free 28. What would our perfect in be? Let's use the rule of 5 seconds to be safe. Quick maths. Free 23. So we just have to, instead of being free 28, because free 28 is our action in. I like to say it as in and perfect in. It's actually free 23. So take your time, roll it, and then pause it at, so hit P at free 23. And that is our perfect in. So boom, we got our first thing. We got our, again, let's say we have a checklist. Let's say we have a note here. Our first check is to be at our perfect in point. And then what do you think we need to do next? We mentioned it before in terms of a UI binding. A, yep. So first checklist is perfect in. We're at free 23. Then we mentioned our second checklist is to be in the correct UI, which is Teamfight UI, which is A. Cool. And there's one more thing we want to be in. Well, technically, I'll change that order around, but I want you guys to figure out what's the next thing we need to do.
Make sure it's in frame, so we have Virgo in frame coming in for the gank, and we see what's happening.
Yep, sure. So we'll use that as an extra one, but you're right. You're not wrong. You're definitely right. You want to be in frame, obviously, before we go in. Anything else? So I'm trying to give it away by what I'm doing here.
So we want the
Yes, correct. We want vision, yes, true as well. But like I said, like framing and vision are kind of like naturally what you should be naturally thinking about anyways. But yes, so if I want to dumb this down, it would be your in point, and then drag scroll locked, as you mentioned. You want to be in drag scroll. However, I want to change that order around actually, just to like change things up. You actually want to be in your in. Let's do an order. So we're at the in point, then go and drag scroll, and then when you're 100% happy with it, because this is where the framing comes in, right? So you framed it. You make sure all the visions are right, and now you press A as your final checklist. So once you're 100% happy with what you are, you're happy with your in, you're happy with your framing, then you want to hit A. And this tells me, tells director, tells whatever that you're ready. Let's say I was watching you on my monitor. I could be like, okay, you're in Teamfight UI. That tells me that you're comfortable that you're in. Obviously, it might be wrong or whatever, but at least that tells me that you're ready. It's like a visual indicator. Let's say I can't hear for whatever reason, everything's hectic, but if I can visually see your feed and see that you're in this UI, I know that you're ready for a replay. So again, that's another reason to why you want to use these visual like keys. This is a workflow of anything, right? Instead of communicating, you can obviously just visually tell me, hey, I'm ready for a replay. And let's say you weren't in that in the UI, I wouldn't probably not take it because you're not ready. Unless you plan on dropping it as soon as the stinger comes in. But that's a risk we don't need to take, right? It's very rarely going to be in that urgent situation. And if you are, then something went wrong in that workflow naturally anyways. So, remind me, volunteers, what's the workflow? What's the first thing you want to make sure? The first, let's do it in order, but that's definitely one of them. So, something to do with timing.
So you want
The in.
3 to 5 seconds
Yeah,
before
you want the perfect in, which is basically an in point with buffer factored in. So, buffer and in point. So, we have that. And then what do we want? Drag scroll lock, yep. And then final thing. Yep, A, Teamfight UI. And this tells me you're ready. And just to go over like a verbal communication workflow, this is literally from how I've worked in industry, at least from Riot Games. And there's no reason why it shouldn't be the standard in my opinion. But you want to be like, okay, so Observer 1, I told you guys, hey, get me a replay of that, please. You did all your work, you did your in, sorry for the mic. You did the in, you did, you're basically ready for the replay. And then you would tell me, we got a replay ready, or replay standing by, replay ready, whatever. Good. So that's you telling Observer 1, because ideally I think Observer 1 should take control as the main director, right? Because they see what's going on. Maybe there's a team fight breaking out and you couldn't see it because you're busy just prepping a replay, right? So it's good, again, to communicate that. What we worked with was main main ops 1 was the core person who could talk to the director, because someone has to do the switching. You might have like a foot pedal and you can do the switching. It wouldn't surprise me if they had that now. Again, give more control to the observer. It only makes sense because how I worked with it early on was observer 1 would tell the director or the TD on a separate comms panel feed, we got a replay ready. So it's like observer 1's ready, we tell director we're ready, then they push the button, and then they tell us we're ready. It's just an annoying third person like communication thing, which we could literally just separate the middleman, right? We can literally just give the control to the observers, which I'm sure is what they did now anyways. But let's just say for communication and education perspective, yeah, you basically, as observers, you tell us when you're ready. So let's try it again. So let's say, okay, oh, that's a good team fight. Oh, could you guys give me a replay of that, please? And you did all your work, and you're probably paused here. And then what would you guys tell me? Replay ready. Yeah, so keyword, replay ready. And then I'd be like, okay, yeah, I'm good to go. And then whoever's a TD, we'd go replay ready and fly replay. So I'm just going to pretend I'm Obs 2 for now. So, okay, oh, can you get me a replay of that, Kevin? Okay, sure, Kevin. Okay, we got a replay ready. We got a replay ready. Standby director. Fly replay in 3, 2, 1. Fly replay. And don't forget with 0, not P, because there could be a time shift there. And boom, stinger flies and we're rolling. We have the buffer just in case. I think 5 seconds is a bit too much, but, you know, factor in like remote broadcast and stuff. So we're rolling out. I'm going to do a nice vision toggle here. Jace doesn't know what's going on. We see the invisibility coming out. I'm going to zoom in for framing. And boom, he dies. And I'm going to try and slow-mo the last hit because it's always nice to do. A bit early there. Because I couldn't remember what happened. Boom. That would be nice slow-mo though, right? And I also remember something happened bot lane. So I'm going to jump bot lane. Kaiser's 4. Boom, she's getting dove here. But I do remember that there was a nice auto attack or a snipe here. So let's roll this out. It's a... there we go. Boom! And there's someone. You can also like zoom in and then workflow back to live. Or standby back to live and back to live. And then director or whatever would change it back to Ops 1 and fly back to live, whatever. And then you know, once as Ops 2 you see your feed is gone from the program feed, then you get out of it. Because you don't want to like bring it out. You might have the, you know, the timer there, you might spoil it. Again, this is why it's important to have a program feed, because you want to see when you're off. You know, oh, it's almost like when you're talking to casters, when you go into a break, you want to see like, oh, you're off. You know, your mic's off. You're not hot anymore. Because I've heard this so many times. You get casters saying, okay, we'll see you back after the break. And they go, oh my god, blah, 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 and you hear it over the broadcast. And they sometimes, I've heard like some bad things of saying like, you know, swear words and stuff like that. But yeah, obviously make sure again that you're off air before you do anything crazy. Speed up because it looks bad. Cool, but yeah, that was basically the workflow. So you guys are still paused, right? So we're gonna do it one by one, okay? So volunteer 1, sorry, I don't know names, so I'm gonna do volunteer 1 and 2 for now. So I'm gonna put you in the hot seat. Maybe we can change the, can we take their feed as the main feed? Is that possible? Oh, no worries, no worries. We'll just, I mean, I could take a set here. But no worries, we'll just practice on our side, right? Cool. So sorry for people outside that can't see it, but we're just gonna roll as an example from our side. So, okay, so, oh, that was a great first blood. Cool, could you guys give me a replay of that, Ops 2? And then you tell me, yep, you're ready. Replay ready, and fly replay. Whoosh. And then you roll out. No worries. Like, I mean, I can't see it, so I can't judge you right now. You can make all the mistakes you want. And meanwhile, I'll show everyone else the lovely Summoner's Rift. Hide the map. Or we'll show what everyone really wants. Animals. If anyone's outside, I want you to shout out the animals that you see. What do we see right now? Is anyone outside? Okay. That's not shouting. Anyone outside? Shout what we see. There we go. There we go. Okay. Alright. What's this? What's this? There we go. Okay, at least you guys know your animals. I'm glad you're learning something. What's this? Yeah, I got you there. Anyways, how was that then? Is that okay? So yeah, basically we talked over the basic workflow of a replay. So hey, can you give me a replay of that? Cool. You set up, you do your checklist, you get your perfect in, you go drag scroll locked, and then you put in TeamFight UI. Then you tell observer 1 or director, we got replay ready. Wait for the replay ready, fly replay or whatever, or go replay, whatever they use, and then you roll. Normally when they say go, you just roll. Normally they might count you down as well. I don't care about counts because normally when they say fly replay, it's when they roll. But some people might go, okay, replay in 3, 2, 1, go. Go on 0, trust them. But obviously if you're working remotely, let's say a lot of my remote work is with North American broadcasts. And from the UK, there's obviously going to be a delay in audio. There's also going to be a delay in feeds. So maybe that 5 seconds might even have to be maybe 8 seconds, right? 8 seconds is a lot. Normally 5 seconds is even too much for me. I like 3 seconds, but 5 seconds might be better for a remote broadcast sending across the ocean kind of thing. But cool. All right, let's try volunteer 2. You guys ready? Okay, we got a replay ready, and fly replay in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, I'm gonna watch you though. Pressure's on. Oh, I'm gonna shoutcast this. Oh, we see. There you go. Taking the crap, coming in for the gank. Jace has no idea what he's doing. Why haven't you warded, Jace? This is supposed to be challenger. I thought we were gonna say NA challenger right here. Death's going on. Death's going on. And I don't know if he's dead or not because I can't see the screen. But when they do, all right, I'm gonna test Observer 2. I want you to jump down to Kaiser, which is number 4. Boom! Oh! And frame it, frame it. Let's see if we can get a slow-mo in there. I'm really putting the pressure on you here. Nice! Oh, got the zoom. And he got it. And then, what do you tell me? I can't remember. Yes, back to live. There we go. Boom. Alright, we're going to round of applause. Our volunteers in here temporarily. Outside, you guys applauding as well? I want to hear loud applauses. There we go. Awesome. So that was the very basics of going into a replay workflow. From my experience as a League of Legends observer, but you can probably apply that to any other game. Like I said, adapt it. You know, not everyone uses the same workflow like this, but I'd assume most of it will be very similar. I've worked with many broadcasts which is more chill, or if anything, less professional like that. It's just go. It's go, but then thinking, I want to count, right? Again, because I work with a lot of North American broadcasts, the fact that they aren't like good with their communication and workflows, it really throws me off guard. Like, because there's a delay, they say go. I was like, okay, I'm going. But then it's like a long stinger, or there's like a 2-second delay, and I've already missed it, right? Because I played out my buffer, and now they switched it. It's already missed half of the action. So that's something you have to work around.
If you're working remote, and you're the sole observer,
yep.
Do you do live replays yourself as well?
If, just to repeat for everyone outside, if I am working remote and I'm the sole observer, do I do replays? So that's very difficult. However, it's possible. And funny thing is that I'm actually working on a project where I am the sole person who runs a whole League of Legends broadcast, which includes observing, somehow doing replays, casting it, and everything, and producing it as well. So that'll be like a fun, you know those like, that weird instrument that someone has who like has a step that hits the drums and everything, like that's like what I imagine it to be. So it's possible. It's even possible with like fancy things like maybe OBS Studios or vMix. With accessibilities like Stream Decks and foot pedals, you're very limited though, because unless you can like somehow tweak it and get the perfect in, like messing around, it's definitely doable. It's just like obviously how good can you multitask, right? How good can you look at feeds? But definitely like I know OBS you can do like record the last 15 seconds. You just have to remember to press that button at the perfect time to get an in, or at least a rough in. So it's doable. It's just very difficult. However, it's definitely possible. And if you can do that, you're basically getting. You're getting paid for like the one observer role, because a lot of amateur broadcasts will only pay one observer, right? But if you can be the main ops and provide replays, guess what? You're stepping up that production value, which is really good. And then you can then negotiate. Hey, most people with one observer can only do the live feed, no instant replays. I'm someone as a sole observer who can do 2. I'm basically obs 1 and 2, and I'm packaged into 1. So give me more. So you can negotiate maybe a higher rate just from doing that extra work.
If you were to do that,
yep.
Like for example, so you have were you going to team fight?
Yeah. I was.
Is there a way to kind of link it up so that you can have? I know that you can have 2 clients over on the same PC, right?
Yes.
But if you have one client with the replay team fight hood up,
yeah.
You have your main observer. Is there a way to then make that follow along? Because you can do that. I know that you can do that in Valorant. So you can have like one observer follow the other.
Yeah.
Is there a way for you to do that in League as well? So then technically it would be much easier to like click this, get all of the X.
Sure. So whether it's possible to actually get so for one PC, I know there's ways around it and there's programs you can use. You definitely can have 2 Riot game clients running on one PC. It's very difficult to do, but you. I think so. Yeah. I think you. Yeah, so it's definitely, I've never messed around with it, but like I've been out of the picture for a while in terms of that stuff. Like I've had the luxury of just working off one PC and having other people and multiple PCs and stuff like that. But no, you can definitely do it. You can even work with things like Parsec. Like maybe you can Parsec into a separate PC and just have that up here. But if you are solely observing, obviously you're going to be the main observer, but one thing you definitely probably ideally should have is a God mode PC or a future client PC, which is, like I said, something that you can see in like 5 or 10 seconds in front of you. And then from that, you can then basically be your own obs too, because you see in the future, and then you see what's going on, kind of thing. Well, cool. Again, apologies for people out there who can't hear that, but we basically asked about how if we can operate like 2 clients, but also like how to be your own almost observer. I didn't get the question fully, so apologies for that. No worries. But I'm trying to like wrap things up to clarify. So the key thing I wanted to get through is like the workflow for a replay. Practice that as you want. As I mentioned, you can literally go home and practice it. As I mentioned, you have now the drag scroll. You have the zoom, which is the default Control Control Shift Z. I don't like that. Mine's bind to V. And we didn't really talk about zoom as well, but that's just more of a framing and positioning kind of thing, which you can probably figure out yourselves. Obviously, you don't want to be too zoomed out because everything looks really small. You only want to be this zoomed out if you want to show wards. Like maybe the casters are like, oh, let's have a look at red team's wards, or oh, red teams have got some really good deep wards in the jungle right now. You flick it on. I lied, but they didn't. But you know that kind of thing, right? You want to show macro. This is something I like to do. I like to show like the more macro side of things. But sometimes casters would not ask for that. You have to show them that, and I literally like it because people rarely do it. I'm known as the observer who shows more the strategy, the more macro, the gameplays, whilst you have some maybe generic observers who just focus on action, action, action. But again, that's kind of boring in my opinion. You want to show like pathing. Oh, I want to show Rek'Sai here, and then he goes down here, right? And we saw a ward here. Early game, we see a lot of early wards. Maybe Rek'Sai paths here, right? So I'm going to jump to the very start, and there's guaranteed to be something like deep wards, and wherever they spot someone out, I mean, it's a solo queue, so maybe not actually. But, you know, in a lot of competitive games, you see like early wards, maybe mid lane wards chickens, and then you can see like Rek'Sai actually pass it. So there's definitely going to be one example of this. Come on, give me one. Challenger players. But yeah, what I mean, okay, here's a nice ward here. So Viego did a ward. I mean, I don't know where the hell that's going, but. So now he has nice vision toggle here. So we see Rek'Sai here. We do blue team toggle. Oh, we now spotted Rek'Sai doing this on a ward. So that was a good use of vision toggle. And now we can then tell that story. Okay, well, how does Viego reply? Does he go anywhere? Does he invade the boss side? A jungle will probably know that he cleared the boss side already. And obviously he wasn't in a position to counter. So sadly or not, he doesn't do anything. He has a ward here. Did he get spotted by this ward? Let's check. Let's do the vision toggle red side. Speed up a bit just so we can make sure. And I don't think he does. So then you go, oh, he doesn't get spotted through this gap here. How sad, right? Or maybe this ward spots this. But then you show, okay, he didn't get spotted by this ward. Maybe it was placed badly, or maybe it's just some weird visual bug. I don't know, right? Another great example here. We got Rek'Sai on this ward here. So this is a great tracking of the junglers, right? Great ward by Viego before. We see Rek'Sai here. We do a vision toggle. We see him start chickens. And then we actually see a ping go out here, I think, from the blue team in a second. So now we know where the jungler is. And obviously in the game of League of Legends, tracking the jungler is very important. So again, storytelling. And now Viego, as a great jungler he is, he should obviously now know that Rek'Sai just cleared Crooks, red wasn't up, and he cleared chickens. So blue team should know where Rek'Sai was. I'm getting way too analytical on this, but again, that's storytelling, right? So now there's no excuses for blue team to die. If anything, this should now allow blue team to ward here to keep full tabs on where the jungler is. Like, yeah, great storytelling. Like, how did blue team die? They know where the jungler was, ideally, right? And they still died. So this is them playing bad. But this is solo queue, so yeah. And I don't know what happened here. But yeah, that's a nice way of explaining. Then that's my storytelling, right? We know where Rek'Sai is. If I was casting that, I'd be like, why is bot lane dying? You know where Rek'Sai is. You literally have him tracked from here. You know he's bot side jungle. Why are you pushing up aggressively, etc. Stuff like that. Cool. All right. Like I said, there's much more. I'm just like conscious of time. Can I get a quick update or?
Yeah, I think we're about there.
Okay, cool. So we can close up. Yeah. Cool. I'm not sure if I have time for questions or anything, but like I said, there's a lot more. Apologies for taking up a lot of time, but I'm happy to do this again. Like, you know, I'm happy to do like an online session with anyone who's interested. Just reach out to me. There's definitely a lot more key bindings, more things, more theory, a lot more advanced things like creator suite and everything. But yeah, hopefully that was interesting and useful. Thank you for the volunteers. Sorry we didn't get a chance to switch around, but just mess around with that workflow. I'm sure Jacob, he's used to it as well, so I'm sure he can work with it with everyone as well. So yeah, just from a pure replay point of view, from League of Legends, adapt it in other games. Know you're in, factor in buffer, factor in what you're framing, any UIs you need to change, because Valorant's obviously different. You know, you have free cam, you have whatever first person as well, and any graphics and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot to factor in, but hopefully that was helpful. Again, apologies for not getting a lot in, but there's plenty of time, plenty of opportunities for me to come in and maybe do more of these. Cool. Anyways, thank you everyone outside. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that as well. Okay, cool. All right. Guess we will pop in there. Maybe if we have time, we can do a very debrief kind of thing. Cool. Awesome.
Just a quick question for Jin. So do we like? I just want to like be conscious of time. So how much time do we have? Okay, cool. So I mean, we're gonna finalize some like any good. I don't want to say like what's good and bad questions, but 5 minutes. Like I said, feel free to reach out to me, Twitter, LinkedIn, Discord, whatever. We can have. Like, I'm happy to do more sessions. Like we didn't get through a lot today. Apologies. I know I took over time a little bit. But hopefully you found that interesting. Hopefully outside people here managed to understand what I was saying from in there. I know it's different from being in there than out here. But we pretty much just focused on the workflow from a replay point of view, right? So what I want you to take away from just that one workshop was the importance of communication. You know, the importance of like, why do we need buffer? Why are we communicating these things like, oh, replay ready and fly replay? It's like indicators, right? Everyone wants to be prepared. Everyone wants to be on the same line because everyone wants to make sure that, oh, we're about to go into a replay. We need the producer to know that. We need the director to know that. And of course, we need the observers to know that. But even like graphics, right? Maybe there's a graphic for some reason isn't automatically changing from the switcher. We got to factor that in. But again, like I said, there's plenty more to it. We just went through very basic key bindings. But with that alone, you can easily just go out there and observe. Like literally, I've had students from that one like key binding session observe some like shows, and it's just practice. Practice makes perfect. But cool. So. Yeah, I mean, I'll take a few questions, or like I said, I'll let Jin cut me off whenever, so, because I talk forever.
Any questions, folks? All of your questions have been answered.
Cool.
What lane? Oh, hello. Yeah, what lane do you main?
Oh, we had that before as well. So, I mean, back in my competitive days, I was a mid laner. I was the shot caller, and if normally I feel like shot callers do come from mid and jungle the best because mid lane is like the center of the map, but also it's hard because you have more to factor in because you're 1v1ing, you're a last hit. So then that people say the jungler takes a better role in shot calling because they have less micro in terms of last hitting minions. It's really subjective. You might just have a player who's stronger. Like we have several supports in professionals who do shot calling, again, because they're not actively last hitting or whatever. It really depends. It depends on the player, it depends on your team, it depends on synergy. Because for my team, I implemented a main shot caller and a secondary shot caller role. So I was the main shot caller, but then I had a secondary shot caller who would question me, right? Maybe I go, let's go Baron. But then they would be like my devil's advocate, or they would be my second like safety line. They'd be like, oh, are you sure about that? Have you considered this? So that's like just a nice workflow. But not everyone does that, right? Some people work off of one shot caller, some work off of everyone just shot callers, and it's just madness comms. But like I said, it really depends. Depends on the team, depends on the players, depends on what, the comfortability of leadership positions and everything. But yeah, to finalize, I was mid laner. Obviously, solo, I was telling another student this, but in solo queue is different to teams. In solo queue, I'd play assassins like Fizz and Zed and LeBlanc. But obviously in teams, I would be playing like utility mages like Orianna in the past. Even like control mages like Xerath and Lux in the mid lane just to wave clear. I was just like a wave clear and bot, and then I would roam. It obviously depends, right? But mid lane, and then obviously when I retired, I basically bounced between roles. I main mid, I then main jungle for a season, and then I main top. I just hate bot lane because I hate relying on someone else. I'm just saying that, man. But yeah. Any other questions? You can just yell them out. You don't need a mic unless it's for like the video.
do you find it, now that you play League of Legends a little bit less, do you find it a little bit more difficult to observe the game?
Oh yeah, definitely. So basically, all the observing work I do now, again, mostly for remote NA stuff, I'm always like, who's this champion? And instead of actually focusing on the game, I'm like, whoa, what's his ability? Or I ask my partner, like, what do they do? What's his name? I'm like, I'm very terrible with names. Like, I used to call Shyvana like Dragon Lady. Obviously, like, just for fun, I just make names up. I mean, even like back in the day when games, anyone remember EULCS, like season 4 or 5, when games would be like average an hour long? Back when Froggen and Elements were still in the game. Basically, we got so bored where we started just making our own like sound effects. And then I would tell the producer, hey, could you put Observer's mic live and we'll just make the sound effects? They didn't do it, obviously, but yeah. But no, playing the game obviously helps because, like I said, I struggled with knowing champions. Even jungle changes, like I don't know what the new Hextech Dragon did, but it made it fun for me because every time I saw it, I was like, whoa, this is going on. Then I would focus on it, and then the cast would be like, why are you zooming on this? But yeah, something like that. But yeah, definitely it helps. If anything, I'm a lot behind. That's why I'm struggling now. I have the leverage of obviously having years of experience, working with Riot, which is the professional leagues, compared to like more up-and-coming observers. But honestly, the talent is crazy. Like from a creator suite or a league directing point of view, their cinematic shots are way better than mine. Like I'm rusty. Like I was at the early development of that. Like if anything, I was at the early push. But they've like gone crazy with how they actually show stuff, and that's where I struggle. If anything, I need to like eventually throw in the towel and be like, look, my time is over. I need to move on to better things. Hence why I'm like dabbling in producing, or maybe even like directing, and other things like that. Cool.
Any last questions, folks? Yep, one at the back.
Thank you. I don't know what's going on here, but like I said, I'll be around. Let Jin take over. He's do everything. Okay.
Do you reckon you ever get back into coaching in the future or anything like that?
So, I mean, I always like coaching just for the fun of it. When I was at Staffordshire, I was basically coaching the League of Legends team there, but there was a lot of political issues with like society stuff. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy coaching. I mean, obviously, commitment-wise, time-wise, might be, in terms of how hard I commit to that, might be a different issue. But from a basic point of view, it's very, I'm happy to do so. Like, if you guys have a League of Legends confetti team, I'm happy to like work with you guys for like, I don't know, once a week or something. Look, I don't want to be big-headed here, but I feel like if I coached a collegiate team, which is like university, like Newell, I feel like I can boost them to the top easily. I've seen the quality of the game.
They're all looking at each other now like, yo.
All right, you guys want to, let's do a session, all right? Let's do a coaching session.
How many of you would be interested in that? Let me see some hands.
Hell yeah. We don't do that, man. Just on the side, maybe.
Folks, can we show some love to Kevin? Thanks so much for a really informative, exciting, and jam-packed session. There was so much. There was like 6 lectures in one. It was amazing. So thank you so much. Folks, just a quick point to note. So your timetables have changed slightly with regards to tomorrow's session. Some of you probably already know this. So your Face It session is taking place tomorrow from 10 till 12 in the morning. So please be here nice and early, 9:30 at least, for the 10 o'clock session, followed by our 12 till 4 session with JD Wu and Kevin. So it should be an amazing, amazing, amazing sesh. And followed by that, it's Gamer Gamer. So thank you very much, everybody. And we'll catch you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.